in the back or anywhere, see forward too. That would be great. Okay. So this event cannot be made possible by the sponsorship of Ripple, Mass Network, Entangle Protocols, FTL, and AAG. And the core organizers are Palau Blockchain Society, Palau Ocean Foundation, Metropolis Global, and Cura, with ecosystem partners' tremendous support. That's Engine Starter, Desmo Labs, and Manta Network. We are very fortunate to have all of you to travel across the sea to here, to this beautiful island of Palau in the West Pacific. And we cannot wait to hear you sharing your wisdom here. So I will just go through some of the logistics. People who have wristbands, don't lose it, because this wristband, either pink or blue, will grant you entry to all the site events and main events here. On your desk, you will see a QR code for the bus schedule, for the agenda. That's the most current agenda, because we have continuously to update, because some speakers have some delays and unable to attend and whatnot. So make sure you scan that, and also you can scan that to get the bus schedules and the Wi-Fi passcode there as well. So without further ado, I would like to welcome and introduce the legendary Alan C., who is the advisor of Palau Blockchain Society, to give his opening remark. And this event cannot be made possible without his support. Thank you, Alan.
Ladies and gentlemen, may we please stand up and welcome His Excellency President Surround Whips Jr., who has joined us this morning. President, thank you for joining us this morning. We have a few guests that are just making their way up from the dining room, so give us a few minutes to catch our breath and make sure everybody's here, and then we'll start the program. In the meantime, I just want to recognize Senator Basilius, who has joined us this morning, the chairman of the Banking and Finance Committee. Thank you, Senator, for joining us this morning. Thank you. While we're kind of waiting for a few minutes, we have our main guest, Vitalik Buterin of Ethereum, is just coming up his way from breakfast. I just want to make some announcements. So first of all, if you would like to join the trip at 4 o'clock today to see the quarry of mining the Yapstone money, the original currencies, you have to register so we know how many of you are going on that trip. And for those who are going on that trip, you will go to the quarry in Airai, in a place called Matugurikul. At 4 o'clock, we depart from the dock, and then from the quarry, the boat will take you directly to the Palau Pacific Resort for the reception at 6:30. And so if you want to wear your shorts or t-shirts, it's okay. We don't have to think about changing and coming back and looking nice tonight. Tonight is a poolside party, and it's going to be hosted by our wonderful friend, Prakas. Prakas, could you please rise? And Mr. President, I have to warn you, Prakas has requested tonight, he wants me to offer a traditional chant. So I will practice somehow, but if I don't do a good job, don't tell the foreigners that I didn't do too well. Yeah, I see some of the guests are just arriving. Jack, if you can help kind of bring our main guest up, that we can recognize him and have him seated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor to welcome Mr. Vitalik Buterin, co-founder and CEO of Ethereum. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. So we are going to get started with our program. So I would like now to ask my brother, Adalbarairik Glenn Seed, to come forward and open our program with a word of prayer.
Good morning, President, and all our guests, everyone. May I ask that we bow our heads to pray? Our Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day here in Palau. We thank you for sending people here to bring your blessings to this island and also be blessed with the beauty of your creation. Father, this morning we have this Palau Blockchain Summit, and we just ask for your blessing. Bless the event from the beginning to the end. Keep everybody safe until they get back to where they came from. And we're just so grateful that you can bring us together to talk and receive information that are important to our society, our culture, and our people. Thank you, Father, for your love. We praise you and honor you this morning, and I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn Seed. Mr. President, our program is now officially open. I just want to announce that the program is being broadcasted live to the world, to many Palauans living abroad via YouTube and Facebook. And so we are really hoping that many young people of Palau will listen in and learn about what blockchain is all about. Let me start by welcoming Vitalik Buterin. It's a great honor for Palau to have you with us, and thank you for coming from so far and making time to be with us. We're so delighted as well that you will have some private time with our president and seeing the nature of Palau. And it is with hope that if you love our island, you will love its people too. So we thank you for that. We also want to welcome James Wallace, the Vice President of Ripple Central Bank Department. James, would you please just be one of the speakers this morning. We have many guests with us. We have many guests with us. I just want to recognize a few of them. I won't be able to recognize everybody, but I've recognized our Senator Basilius, and again, Senator, thank you for joining us today. We also have a delegate from Peleliu, Delegate Soal Ablay. Mr. Jonas this morning. Thank you, Congressman, for joining us. We are going to get the program underway. So, as you know, we have a lineup of very prominent speakers. We'll hear from Vitalik. We'll hear from His Excellency the President. We'll hear from James Wallace to open the day this morning. But let me say a few words. First of all, on behalf of all the sponsors, organizers of the Blockchain Summit, we really thank you for coming from so many places to join us. This is the first time that the Blockchain Summit has been organized in Palau, as well as anywhere in Micronesia. So we're very fortunate that we have some friends from the neighbor islands. Can I ask the delegations from the CNMI to please stand up so we know they're here? So with our friends led by Glenn Hunter. Glenn Hunter is the cyber security, blockchain, internet, anything to do with the technology advisor to the governor of the CNMI. And we are very pleased that they could be here. And we hope they will enjoy Palau as well and enjoy some of the food packs which we hear they love. And also we have a very honored to have a very good friend and very close to Palau, a senator from Marshall Islands, Senator Paul David, is here with us. I think he's making his way up from the breakfast, but we will recognize him again when he comes. So, Mr. President, as we open our program today, I've been asked on behalf of as advisor of the Palau Blockchain Society, comprising of many young people, in my capacity as their advisor, to welcome everybody. So I couldn't sleep last night thinking about what I was going to say. And then this morning I prayed, and then I said, since I prayed, I just get up there and start talking. I don't know what I'll be saying, but I hope you'll be okay. So, you know, the blockchain industry is all new. Several years ago, about a year or so ago, I had the honor and distinction of traveling to Silicon Valley and met with some noteworthy people, and the president was with us, and some guys came to me and said, Alan, we represent this fund. Oh, by the way, let's welcome Senator David Paul, who just arrived. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you so much. Please come and make a seat. By the way, on a side note, David Paul is the inspiration of blockchain, digital technology for the Marshall Islands. And I keep telling the Palauan senators, if you fall behind, the Marshalls will take off and leave us behind. So we got to work together and succeed together. Right, Senator? Yes. Thank you. So in this last 10 years, these funds from very big foundations were talking to me and trying to help Palau with grants for protecting the oceans. As you know, Palau is very well known for its stance on the climate change issues and stance on protecting the oceans and the marine life. And they were sharing with me, we come from foundations like Dell Foundation, Microsoft Foundation. They said, you know, in the past 10 years, the new wealth of the young people of the United States have exceeded the wealth of the wealthy of the last 100 years. And we're talking about companies like Google, we're talking about companies like Microsoft, we're talking about many, many new companies that have become life-changing, game-changing in the industry. And of those companies, we do recognize that Ethereum is one of the leading companies in the world. So we are, as a nation, a young nation. We became independent only October 1, 1994. I had the honor of being a member of the House of Delegates at that time, and I worked side by side with President Whip's father, Surround Whip's Senior, and I was able to be asked by then our President Kuniwo Nakamura to be the master of ceremony of that day. So I keep telling my friends and I keep telling my children, if I should ever write a book, or if I should ever count the highlights of my life, what would be one of those highlights? And I tell them this, I said, the moment that your father told the people of Palau, lower the flag of the United States, raise the flag of the Republic of Palau, and as the flag rose and the wind opened the flag, and I said, at this very moment, We are a sovereign, independent nation of the world. Can we give me a round of applause for that? The emotion that came with that was something that I will take with me for the rest of my life. And what it means is that sovereignty is a great, valuable asset. It's not just your ocean, it's not just your oils or gas fields or your fisheries. Sovereignty itself is a very, very valuable asset. And so I said to Japan, the first country to sign diplomatic note with Palau was the United States. And that was done by way of recognizing the Compact of Free Association, which gave us our independence from being a colony or a trusteeship island. The second country that became our second diplomatic friend was Japan. And then we built it up. We now have over 125 friends, Mr. President, from all over the world with diplomatic relations. And I was appointed by way of my father's ancestry to become the honorary consul of the State of Israel to the Republic of Palau, which I have been for nearly 20 years. And I was so proud when President Johnson Toribio signed a treaty with the Republic of Palau stating that every Palauan citizen can arrive in Israel without visa. And so the relationships have been adding up, and I would like to say from the day one of the October 1, 1994 to today, Palau's value of its sovereignty has been growing and growing and growing. And it is growing, and just recently the Republic of Palau, through our President Serang Reeves Jr., signed a new agreement on the Compact of Free Association with the United States that further cements our relationship and further cements the respect for rule of law, respect for entrepreneurship, and respect for discovering the horizons beyond the reef. So I would like to end my comment by saying, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Buterin, Mr. Wallace, Palau is a new nation. And as we navigate towards our future as though we are sailing on a modern-day canoe, we need stars to guide us towards our future. I ask each and every one of you, with your skills, with your knowledge, with your passion, to be a bright star up in the sky for Palau to see, to help us find a better future for our children. That is all my comment, and so thank you so much. I will now call upon the President of Palau. I would like now to call upon His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Palau, a great visionary, a future-thinking leader, the one who is paving the way towards a future for all the Palauans in the future. But before the President comes, we're going to hear the video from Keith Kroc. And if I can just explain, Mr. President, Keith Kroc is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the State Department under the presidency of Donald Trump. And he has become a good friend of the President in Palau. And he's the founder of a company called DocuSign. And he's and also a chairman of the board of Purdue University as well. And he really wanted to take time to just greet everybody, let them know that Palau is on the right course. So if I may, Mr. President, can we just hear him first, and then we can have you speak, please. Thank you.
Warmest appreciation to the people of Palau, and of course the esteemed attendees of the Palau Blockchain Summit. But most of all, congratulations to President Whips on the remarkable success of the summit. You know, when I was running DocuSign, we prided ourselves in being a catalyst for the digital transformation. I stand before you today because Palau has made significant strides in advancing that digital transformation and is a shining example for the entire world. One of Palau's many noteworthy achievements is the establishment of the Palau undersea cable. When I was United States Undersecretary of State, I had the privilege of playing a role in this endeavor. So it fills me with great pride to see how this cable has brought world-class internet connectivity to Palau and to the entire global digital landscape. Palau's digital residency program has been a beacon of light for attracting global talent to further contribute to the nation's growth. And Palau's commitment to welcoming innovative minds demonstrates the nation's forward-thinking approach. Another remarkable achievement is the successful pilot program and launch of the Palau stablecoin program with Ripple. This initiative has not only fostered financial inclusion, but has also contributed to Palau's economic growth. Palau is showing the world how blockchain technology can be harnessed for the betterment of society. Now, Palau's recent signing of the updated compact agreement with the United States further strengthens mutual cooperation and support. This collaboration ensures a prosperous future for both nations and paves the way for strengthening ties between our two nations. Palau's success has contributed to economic freedom and liberty in the Indo-Pacific region. I can tell you from my conversations with our allies in the region, they see Palau as a linchpin of democracy. Palau's commitment to sustainable development is evident in its efforts in becoming a leading hub for the blue economy. The nation's world-class digital corporate registry and digital banking system promote transparency and efficiency, driving nations towards a brighter, sustainable future. By empowering its people and fostering sustainable practices, Palau is setting an example for others to follow. And I can assure you that the United States and our allies are grateful for everything that you're doing. For that, I express my heartfelt gratitude to all those present here today and to our partners who have supported Palau's digital economy and sustainability goals. Your contributions have been instrumental in Palau's success. I have no doubt that Palau will continue to lead the way in digital transformation and sustainability. The potential of Palau and its people is boundless. As we move forward, let us embrace this potential and create a future where technology and nature coexist in perfect harmony. And for the purpose to better create a future for Palau and the world. Together, we can harness the power of technology as a force for freedom to build a world that is truly prosperous for all. I thank you.
That was a very nice speech given by Keith Crack. Thank you for that, Mr. Crack. I think it's really great to have big supporters like himself for Palau. Elaine, did you want to say something?
No, I know I live in sea. It's fine.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are very thankful for the President to be with us this morning. May we give him the floor. Mr. President, please do us the honors.
Ali, Will Tutao. Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first, I think, blockchain summit in Palau. We are indeed grateful to have people from all over the world joining us in this event, and especially our guests from the Web3 space, the blockchain space, and digital residents that are here with us. I know that our colleagues from the National Congress, I see Delegate Relul, Delegate Talay, I heard Delegate Sola Blay and Senator Basilius, members of our Congress that are joining us here today. And I think they're all here to hear from our friend Vitalik Buterin, who a year ago, I think it was about a year ago, when we first spoke through Zoom, and I invited you to come to Palau, and it's so great to have you here. Because really what this conference is about bringing people together. Palau is a fairly young nation because our independence began in 1994. So this next year we will celebrate our 30th birthday. But really, in reality, we were a nation way before other people claimed us as their part of their country. So, you know, we didn't have a choice. The Spanish came along and said, "Oh, you're part of us." And then, without our saying, the Spanish sold us to the Germans. And so we became part of Germany. And then after that, the Germans, the League of Nations gave us to Japan. And then after, of course, World War II, we were given to the United States as a trust territory. So finally in 1994, we gained our, I could say, our freedom to be sovereign again. And you know, harnessing the digital technologies is all about freedom, right? You know, and we're looking forward for the next few days, not only keeping you cooped up in this room, but also experiencing what Palau has to offer. And I think what's most important is that as a country, we've got to look at our strengths and see how we can leverage them for creating opportunities for our people. So, as a government, first of all, I want to thank all of you that are here, and of course the Blockchain Society, Elaine and Alan, for bringing everyone together. Because as a government, we promote private sector development. We want to help entrepreneurs grow, because if you are successful, Palau is successful. It's truly a partnership. That's the ultimate goal, is to have everybody prosper together. So really our goal is, how do we create or diversify our economy and take advantage or use the new technologies to help our country move forward. We have a small population. It could be I guess a hindrance, but it also creates an opportunity. We're in the Western Pacific. We're on the same time zone as Japan, and of course, I think only an hour ahead of China. So our location is important. We have a rich history and culture, and also we're very blessed to have to be a large ocean state. We always like to say that we have an ocean the size of France. And I think one of the things that Palau is well known for is protecting that ocean. And how do we optimize the use of those resources to really benefit our people. So when I was running for president, one of the things that Alan, we talked about was, so how do we diversify our economy? How do we look at other ways that can help Palau grow, but not, I think, put too much stress on our environment? Because you have to balance growth with the protection of our environment. And you know, one of the things that we see is that as you have mass tourism, although it's good, it provides economic benefit, but it also causes stress on the environment. So it's this constant balance. We know we have fishing, but if we overfish, then we also destroy those resources. So it's about balancing. So embracing the digital technology creates another space where we can grow our economy. And Palau is very fortunate to have one fiber optic cable, a second one that will be connected next year to provide redundancy. And we know that even as we speak, Starlink is now changing the world. So that digital connectivity continues to expand. In fact, just this year, we signed a grant with the United States to provide digital connectivity to every home in Palau. That means fiber to the home. It was a $36 million grant. So part of that, building the capacity so that every business, every home will have fiber to the home, which hopefully will create opportunities for digital nomads to want to come and stay. And I had an opportunity last year to go to Kauai to just understand how things are going in Kauai, and maybe Palau should be the next Kauai. That's just so we went to this home that a young couple was in. And when we went to this home, the young couple was in, and the person renting it, so I asked him, I said, what does this young couple do? Because they're paying $18,000 a month in rent. And I said, and he said, well, they're one of the top successful producers of content on TikTok. And so they were there for 18 months, and their next destination was Portugal. And they were going to stay there for 18 months. But young people with innovative new ideas, creating content, and wanting to live around the world. So how does Palau fit into this picture? What can we do? So about 2 years ago, and I want to thank the members of the OEK in this room, we began on the journey to create the digital residency program. And we partnered with a company called Cryptic Labs. And as of today, we have 10,000 digital residents. And our goal is to continue to make that grow. But you can't just have digital residents, and Vitalik is one of them. You have to provide services and value to what that residency provides. And I think that's one of the things that we hope to hear today from you as you continue to collaborate, to give us ideas of how we can expand those opportunities for people. One of the things that, of course, is important, an important part of that digital residency program is that it's a way to verify identity, to build trust, and what we want to continue to add to that is things like mailing addresses, banking services. Of course, we have James here that will share a little bit about the CBDC, but most importantly, developing a stable coin. We're also expanding the opportunity to possibly have digital and voice and text communications for those residents, and continuing to provide products that can enhance that residency. One of those areas is to be able to have a digital registry, which our friend Mr. Kroc was sharing. But really, the role of government, I always like to use this as an example, is to provide a playing field. And I like to use a baseball field as an example. So we provide the baseball field, maybe the referees and the umpires to help make sure that the game is played fairly, and at the end of the day, the opportunity really comes down to the players and the audience to enjoy. And that's what government is here to do. So really, today it's about setting that foundation, sharing, and learning. If I just may share, one of the biggest challenges as a small nation that we have is that over the last 25 years, half of our population has left Palau. And when they leave Palau, you're losing talent, you're losing those young people. Most of them, in fact, 99% of them are moving to the United States, right? Which is, I think, the trend in the world. So embracing digital technology, coming up with new ideas is hopefully another way to bring our young people back home, to find opportunities for them, because now you can work anywhere and do work remotely. And I know that there are young people today that live and work in Palau, that are Palauan, but work for companies that are in the U.S. And that's really what we want to see. It's embracing that transformation, creating those opportunities, so that all of us can live where we want to live. And I like to say, in the most beautiful place on the planet, just like our friends from the Marshall Islands and CNMI, but I like to say that we live in the pristine paradise. And but you know, the idea is that why not be able to live where you want and create opportunities and prosperity wherever you are. So today, I know at the end of the day, one of the opportunities, and Alan has shared, is for everyone to visit the Yapese quarry, or the Yapese stone money quarry that was in Palau. In fact, if you don't know, all of the Yapese stone money was mined here in Palau and was carried by canoe back to Yap. Yap is about 260 nautical miles away, and if you can just imagine, small wooden canoes carry these big discs across the ocean, navigating by the stars to get there. But you know, lives were lost. Some of them are at the bottom of the ocean. Some of them are still here on the Rock Islands, and some of them are in Yap. But really, we always say that's the beginning of blockchain technology, right? Every one of those discs have a story. And that story creates the value of that stone money. And I think that's the important role in our culture, our tradition of how we learn and we adapt from that. Palauans, we also have our own version of money. And we have really two kinds of money in Palau. One is the turtle shell, a lot lighter than the 4-meter size stone, right? So the turtle shell may not be the best example, because you know, these are from hawksbill turtles that we should protect, because they're also getting rare. But this is something for hundreds of years we've made and we consider value, and it's traded, whether building a house, at funerals, and the value really comes about the stories. It was used and given to a certain nephew, or somebody that provided something, and that story becomes the value that's in this turtle shell. And then, you know, but Palauans didn't stop there. Then they saw the opportunities having beads, right? So you'll see these around Palau. So this is a ba, and I think albiol, much smaller ones, or young, kluk, and then an albu. So what I see that happen in Palau is we kept on getting smaller and smaller in our use of money, because you know we learned that it's heavy to carry those big discs around. But each of these monies have a story, whether they were used to create peace between the villages, or you know, when the villages would war against each other, sometimes the chiefs would have to go get their money to pay the other chiefs to get peace, or to return what was happening. Or they would use the money to buy a canoe, or they would use it to buy a house. Or at funerals, it'll be a part of a marriage settlement, or to take care of those obligations at the funeral. All of those stories were all kept in our original Palauan blockchain, which I think today we're all learning about how we can embrace new technology. Of course, then we went to money, right? Dollar bills. And then now we've gone beyond that. Credit cards, and then now it's all on our phones. And I think what's most important is that we, you know, really look toward setting up Palau to be economically resilient, a growing economy that everybody can share in, And really, as we look into the future, we think of Palau not just as a physical destination, but also as a digital one. And we see Palau as a place where innovation thrives, where tradition and technology can coexist, and where every digital resident is really an ambassador of those Palauan values. We really want to embrace the digital age. We really, with the wisdom of our ancestors, the energy of our youth, and the vision of a more brighter and a more connected future. All of you here today, we invite you to be part of this journey, to co-create, to innovate, and to provide us a global context as we push Palau into its next chapter. So thank you for being here. We look forward to hearing all the great ideas of how we can grow together. God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think the speech provided by His Excellency this morning fits the words in English, inspiration. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would like to call Dr. Elaine Wong, PhD, to come and introduce Vitalik Buterin to all of us, and then she will take over the program and be our MC till this afternoon. Elaine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alan. Actually, I wasn't prepared for this, but so thank you, Mr. President, for your inspiring talk, and thank you, Alan, for the introduction of everything behind Palau. And just before I introduce Vitalik, I also want to remind everybody that for all the speakers, we will have time reminders sheets there for 5 minutes and 3 minutes and 1 minute reminder, as we have a pretty tight schedules going forward from this point. We have a lot of world-leading experts talking about the new innovations and progress in blockchain. So now I would like to introduce our special guest, Mr. Vitalik Buterin, to give us a keynote, to share his experience and his knowledge on how blockchain technology can help transform Palau. And I think everybody knows who you are.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Elaine, and thank you, Mr. President, and everyone else for just inviting me to come here and giving such a warm welcome so far. So I thought that we would talk about the main subject, which is like what are some ways in which the blockchain space, which I think these days is not just a blockchain space. These days, ZK technology, the new buzzword, is becoming almost as important as blockchains are. Can be helpful to Palau and to like some of the things that have been talked about in the last half hour about what Palau is trying to achieve. So to start off, just recap of things that are already happening, right? So there's the Palau ID, right? So digital residency, which is this is something that more and more countries are really starting to look into, which I think is a very positive trend, right? So I like as was mentioned, I have one of these Palau IDs myself. It's actually right over here. You can look at it, but it's over the last I think like 5 or 10 years, we've been seeing more and more countries start to have these kinds of programs, and they generally happen for all kinds of different reasons, right? Like countries are interested in attracting people and especially interesting people to come and sometimes stay in person, also sometimes try to create some kind of digital presence, right? So the e-Estonia effort that's happened over the last 10 years kind of strikes me as a bit of an inspiration here, right? Even back 10 years ago, the Estonian government was saying things like, sorry, like saying things, apologize. Okay. There we go. Saying things like talking about how the future of nations is that they cannot just be physical nations, they also need to be digital nations, and really trying to explore the question of like, what would it look like for Estonia to become a digital nation, right? And so they offered this digital residency program where anyone around the world could apply, could become a digital resident, and digital residents could do all kinds of things, right? You could open a bank account. You know, if you are also physically Estonian, you could use digital residency certificates to vote. There's start a company, I think, was another one that's possible. Just all kinds of services, right? And this actually provided all kinds of value to many kinds of people in the world, right? Like there's a lot of people for whom it was just a very easy and accessible path just to do things like set up businesses that are inside of the EU, right? And it's empowered a lot of people around the world whose home countries either had weaker infrastructure or had repressive governments or all kinds of things, and it just gave them a new opportunity to thrive. So I think there's a lot of value in these kinds of programs. There's also a lot of value in just giving people more options in terms of physical residency. There's an increasing number of nomads. There's an increasing number of people who are thinking about taking a more active choice in which country they live and base themselves, and sometimes even settle in for the long term. Like sometimes by choice and sometimes out of necessity, unfortunately. But in either case, it's very valuable to just have there be countries around the world that give people more options. And so I think these things are valuable. But the other interesting thing that distinguishes the Palau program, of course, is the blockchain component, right? It's not just a card. It's an NFT on chain. It's you can digitally prove that you have one. And being on chain is nice because it gives, for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it gives you the ability to interface with the rest of the on-chain Ethereum ecosystem, right? So if you have other kinds of Ethereum applications that need to, need some way to verify that someone is a unique person, that needs some way to verify to what extent a particular person can be trusted, many different kinds of applications, they can just directly and immediately plug into something like this, right? So I think this is valuable, and I think especially in the age of AI that's getting more powerful and very quickly over the next couple of decades, one of the many things that's really valuable to have is just more different and effective ways for people to prove that they're actually people, right? Like 10 years ago, you could prove that you're 10 years ago, you could prove that you're a person just by, clicking on all the pictures that have a giraffe. These days, the robots can do it, right? 5 years ago, you could prove that you're a person by, writing an essay about the history of Pacific Island nations. These days, robots can do that too, right? So having, just more and better ways for us to identify, who actually is a person, and is just something that's valuable to preserve our ability to continue to communicate with and to continue to trust each other. So that's something that I think is was one of the big reasons why specifically having these kinds of digital things is useful, right? And if it's just because it's tied directly into the Ethereum ecosystem, these are just digital proofs that become very easy to use, right? In addition to just proofs of who you are, also things like this can be made useful as a second factor for authentication, to authenticate yourself, right? To like actually, be able to log in and to be able to verify that it's still you that's in control of the account. So this is actually one of the things that I might recommend for the future is to like actually add a hardware chip into the card, right, and like make the card itself capable of signing things. This is something that cards in Japan can do. Taiwan is has a digital citizen certificate, can do these kinds of things. So just another thing that's valuable, right? But like the fact that this exists, I think, is really important. I mean, also stablecoin. Stablecoins are, I think, something that can be very great and very valuable. I think it's good to have more options for people to have payments. It's good for people to be able to continue to transact each other without relying on a centralized intermediary. It's good for even from a just sovereignty perspective to be able for people to be able to digitally interact with each other without having to rely on infrastructure where all of it is controlled by like maybe 3 different companies that are based in the same other country. It's valuable for people to have something that's just very steady and just guaranteed to be there. I mean, it's I think. 20 years ago, the gold standard was for something to be guaranteed to be there, it needed to be physical, right? And I think there's, still value in physical things, but like the quality of the internet is really getting better and better, right? And there's more and more redundancy in internet connections. There's, you got the cables and the satellites, and so I think being able to like actually build off of and leverage that is really valuable as well, right? But these are things that are happening now, right? So what could happen? I think there's 2 major directions that Palau can look in. And the first direction is just Palau as physical and or virtual base for blockchain projects. And the second is technology use inside of Palau infrastructure. This could mean government, this could also mean commercial, right? This could also just mean like customer and merchant adoption. It could mean all kinds of things, right? And I think another part of this here is education, right? So helping local people, get into the technology sector is always something that's valuable, but there's like a limit to how much, like things like university programs can help, right? Like I think for learning to really be effective, it needs to be hands-on, there need to actually be opportunities for people to participate in things directly. So Palau is a physical and virtual base for blockchain projects. I think there is a big need for a lot of people in the crypto space today to just have a jurisdictional legal base that just makes it practical for them to do certain basic things, right? So DAOs are one of the interesting trends that is happening recently, right? Projects are interested in setting themselves up in a way that's decentralized and a way that allows the community to participate in maintaining the project, governing the project, and these kinds of things. But the frameworks for allowing these kinds of completely virtual, completely on the blockchain entities to like actually interact with other things that already exist in the physical economy are not yet very strong, right? And there are a lot of models for legal frameworks that can improve on this, right? So there is the Wyoming DAO law, there is the token law in Liechtenstein, which is also, it's pretty powerful. It allows you to basically put legal rights into tokens and into on-chain assets that could be tradable, and this is something that's usable for DAOs as well, because DAOs have on-chain addresses and they can hold tokens. Interaction with the real world economy in other kinds of ways, right? So there's a lot of ongoing interest in projects that are trying to tokenize real world assets, do things like fractionalizing existing real world assets, create more links between the on-chain world and the off-chain world that go beyond like just a stable coin. And this is again something that I think a lot of projects are really looking for places where they can effectively do this. There's a lot of other categories as well. Like there's just launching tokens is one of those things that's where like there aren't really very good alternatives, and it's the sort of thing that's like hard, and ironically it does not get less hard if you're more scammy. Like I think you even argue that it's if you're more scammy, it gets less hard, unfortunately, right? So like this is one of those things where like it's not even just like a trade-off between protecting against scams and giving people more options. It's like there are opportunities to improve on both that really at the same time that haven't really been claimed yet, right? So I think there's opportunities to innovate in all of these. Palau is a physical base, so as I mentioned, there's a growing number of individual digital nomads from all around the world. I think maybe 10 years ago, people were maybe coming from the United States and other Western countries, but it's increasingly turning into a global phenomenon. People coming from anywhere, going to anywhere. Increasingly remote teams. Remote teams, this is something that's like very strong, especially in the crypto space, and definitely in the Ethereum community in particular, right? So if you think about like any other tech space, like if you look at AI, for example, like what city in the world is the global capital of AI? You can shout it, there's an easy answer.
San Francisco.
Right, okay. Now, what city is the global capital of crypto? Right, exactly. The shrug is the correct answer, right? It's, if you look at Ethereum's history itself, right, the project was first publicly launched at a Bitcoin event in Miami. A lot of the initial development happened by developers that were based in Berlin. The Ethereum Foundation was legally based in Switzerland. The big parts of the development team are also based in Romania. There are client teams that are based in Australia. There's a growing number of researchers that's based in Taiwan, right? And Ethereum Foundation also has a base in Singapore. It's just like literally everywhere, right? And like there isn't even within the United States, actually the closest thing the Ethereum Foundation has to an office is actually in Denver, right? So it's a very distributed thing, and I think there's this unique culture that's emerged in the space of like really going all in and embracing this, right? And it's there's frequent, like gatherings, retreats, and events, and at the same time, like people are free to attend as many of these as they want, and otherwise, live wherever they want to get work done. And this is something that has really empowered a lot of people to participate in a way that is much more difficult in pretty much any other industry. So Palau is a place for people to come and stay longer term, and not even just people as individuals, but even entire teams. This is something that I think is very possible to try to encourage more of. And in terms of like practical advice for how to make this happen, I mean, honestly, the simplest answer is like the boring thing: have more direct flights. So direct to Singapore is great, but it's like add a couple of more, and make them more frequent, and I think that's already solves a big part of the problem. So I think there's a good opportunities for Palau to participate in both of these. And then the other side of the conversation is the technology, right? So we have basic digital ID, right? And we have basic stablecoins, but like what can come after this, right? So in Zulu earlier this year, there was a project called ZooPass that was like basically started just for the sake of experimenting in Zulu, but since then it's really turned into a much bigger thing. That's basically become this much more ambitious like project trying to solve the question of what would a privacy preserving and secure internet stack look like. So what we have here is a QR code, and this QR code contains a zero-knowledge proof. And the zero-knowledge proof proves that I am a Zoom resident without revealing which one I am, right? So there's a set of about 700 people that are able to generate these QR codes, but when this QR code reveals nothing more that I am one of these 700 people. There's also a digital version of this, so you can this is a phone app, and you can use it to sign into other internet services. And when you do that, you're again proving that you're a resident without revealing which one you are. And the system also basically generates a random ID for you. So if you sign in twice, you still get the same ID, right? So what this means is you can do things like make a ZK voting system. This also existed. It's called ZooPoll, zoopoll.org. It's still usable, right? And that basically lets you do privacy preserving and secure voting, just entirely based on top of this stack. So this sort of thing is powerful. It's powerful for a lot of different things. And I think there's a big set of things that this sort of thing can be expanded into that really go beyond just this basic use case, right? So one of the features of ZooPass that was added kind of later on, closer to the end of Zizalo, was this thing that they call stamps. So if anyone here is an Ethereum person, they're familiar with POPE, the proof of attendance protocol. This is basically that, but in zero knowledge, right? So you can get stamps that attest that you participated in specific events, that you were contributed to particular things, prove that you have certain skills, all kinds of things. And these stamps are a part of your wallet, but the world doesn't see what stamps you have by default, right? If he wants to prove specific things, you can. If he wants to prove some calculation over the things that you have, you can, right? And this is something that is useful for, I think, all kinds of things, right? It's useful for credit, for example, just as a way for people to track evidence about things in their personal histories that prove that they're trustworthy in a certain sense. And potentially you could imagine an ecosystem where people use these things to apply for loans, and you're able to really benefit from a much richer amount of information about yourself that really incorporates a lot of often even less formal things that don't show up in university degrees, for example, and do things in a way that preserves more privacy, right? So this is valuable, I think, and this is something that even existing digital ID systems can go and incorporate the technology, and I think there's a lot of value in trying to go in this direction. And then the other thing that is, I think, makes a lot of sense to talk about is just continuing to improve the stablecoin, right? So, it's good that it exists, and I think it's, it's interesting, right, how in the blockchain space, payments were really how it all started. And I even remember back in 2013, there was this very vibrant subculture around trying to get people to actually use and pay with Bitcoin. There was this person in Berlin. His name was Jörg Platzer. He was the owner of a bar called Room 77, and at one point he decided that he would just go around as many of the other restaurants and stores within a few hundred meters of Room 77 and convince as many of them as he could to also start accepting Bitcoin. And he actually did. And there was this district called the Bitcoin Keats that got created as a result, and there are over a dozen different restaurants and stores that could take Bitcoin. And I remember visiting Berlin and just staying in that region. I was able to use Bitcoin to actually pay for a bunch of things. And back then I think the pitch for Bitcoin was basically that it had lower fees. And it's not PayPal, you don't have to pay 30 cents and 3% for every transaction. But the challenge is, of course, that since then fees went up, and that basically ended up really killing this movement, right? Now, the good news is that now it's 2023, And we have all kinds of rapidly maturing, actually scalable and actually cheap payment systems. There's layer 2s, you have layer 3s, there's like state channel technology. On the Bitcoin side, you have Lightning. There's even payment-focused rollups, things like Loopring that have been like extremely cheap ways of paying people for years now. So there's a lot of these different things that are actually like possible, and the value that you get is that you get a very resilient payment system that can avoid depending on a centralized actor, just for people to continue to be able to make payments and have access to their money, and it's a system that I think could potentially also benefit a lot from just interacting with the existing Ethereum layer 2 ecosystem, right? Like if a merchant here accepts a stablecoin, someone coming in from abroad doesn't need to like yet have that stablecoin, right? What they could do is they could even make a payment using whatever coin they already have, and that could get automatically converted into the stablecoin during the payment through some existing DeFi protocol on Ethereum, right? Like these are things that are actually possible, and so I think trying to like really improve that interaction and make more of that happen is something that can be really valuable. But at the same time, we still need to do some like more work on improving ease of use. As a system like this becomes more high stakes, improving security is also more important, right? While a system is like a test and while it's fairly low stakes, it's okay if like everything depends on an 80-digit number that's like stored in your computer, but at some points, you want to try to actually move beyond that, right? So, there's a lot of technical work that's can be done, but the good news is that there's this entire ecosystem that's continuing to do basically the exact same kind of work, right? And so there's a lot of things that you can really leverage and build off of, right? And I think that's probably the conclusion that I want to end with, right? Is that I think this technology has a lot of value in creating systems that are open and where you can see like what's going on the inside. You can see what are the rules and be sure that the rules of the system are being followed, and give people the ability to like individually go and check that if they say they made a payment, like that the payment actually happened. It's technology that is completely open source. It's avoids being dependent on any kind of centralized actor. Not whether it's like a corporation or any foreign country. But the other big benefit of this is, I think, the benefits that come from being able to plug into a global community, and the fact that there are all of these other people that are building these existing open tools that you can just plug in and use, right? And that's much more powerful than just having to build your own entire thing from scratch. And so I think this is one of the reasons why it's valuable to have events like this, right? To try to bring people here together with people from this the global community, and start making these links happen. And I think a conversation today can turn into a really amazing technical project a year from now, and a really awesome application that benefits thousands of people here 2 years from now. So thank you.
Thank you, Vitalik, for the inspiring talk. And I think just like what Vitalik said, there are actually a lot of other digital innovations here after the digital residency and the stablecoin project. Indeed, there is a tokenization of the real-world asset platform that's being built, and we will discuss that and showcase that tomorrow. So stay tuned and come back here tomorrow. Yes?
Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, our president has to leave to attend another state function. So let's give him a round of applause. And He will be joining us at the quarry to see the stone money this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. President, for your presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, for the notice. So, more housekeeping items. So please, if you have your phone, please make sure you silent your phone. And we don't want to disturb everybody listening to the amazing speeches. So that's one. And two, after the morning session, we will have lunch boxes for everyone in the restaurant downstairs. So just head downstairs after the morning session and then grab one of the lunch box and then either eat in restaurants, and we have places, lounges here you can also use. So also like Talungab, maybe we can also use the stand for people who come attend this event, maybe. We can discuss that later. So for the next talk, we have the honor to have His Excellency Minister of Finance, Khaled Udui, to share some of the updates and impacts of Palau's digital residency and stablecoin project, and how it affects Palau, and how it is like to push this project in Palau to implement it. Minister of Finance, may we have the honor?
Yes, you can use
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to see a lot of friends that I haven't seen in a while, and Parkesh, hi. And a lot of people who are just not friends yet, because it's the first time I've seen you. So I look forward to getting to know some of you through some other interactions that we may have through this week and through this conference. So thank you very much for being here in Palau. We know it is sometimes far, not always easy to get here from abroad. I myself came this morning. I had to cross a bridge, so I'm also traveling overseas, you could say. But it's very nice to see so many new faces here, and thank you for your tourism business. I'm also very happy to have spoken to one of our digital residents, Mr. Buterin. Thank you for being in Palau. I remember we were speaking with the president online over a year ago. So finally, you made it. Thank you for being here and being a supporter of Palau. I really enjoyed listening to some of your suggestions for our programs. So I'd like to share a little bit more about those programs, and I don't need to share as much as it's already been covered, so my job is a lot easier. But I'm very happy to also meet you, because it really does take a lot of partners to make things happen, especially with the difficulties that we face as small island and small island governments. So we really appreciate the ability to work with such forward thinkers and people who really do care about making things better for people, and that's something underlying the initiatives that we are pursuing in Palau. So I would say that today marks a significant moment as we discuss Palau's strides in the digital realm. As the Minister of Finance, I'm privileged to share with you the impacts of the digital residency program and the Palau stablecoin project. And these embody our nation's commitment to the future for our people. Our government's dedication to progress and embracing the future has given birth to the Palau Digital Residency Program and the Palau Stablecoin Project. These programs are more than initiatives. It's a manifestation of Palau's ambition to evolve and participate in the digital age and look outside of the traditional tourism economy that has fueled our operations of the government for so long. The digital residency program, in collaboration with our partner Cryptic Labs, who I don't see in the audience today, we have harnessed the capabilities of an RNS platform. This platform is a beacon of accessibility, offering digital residency to individuals worldwide. Through our partnership with Cryptic Labs, we grant individuals a government-issued ID from Palau, from the comfort of their homes. The benefits of our digital residency ID program are several-fold. As a digital resident, an individual is entitled to stay, just recently, an additional 180 days over the typical 90 days that's afforded to a typical tourist. They're also able to receive a physical mailing address and can be recognized for KYC verifications to engage in online activities. We've also proudly reached a milestone of 10,000 digital residents. Significant because it's over half of our current population in Palau. And with the steady interest we're witnessing, this number is expected to grow. We expect to double over the next year. Our collaboration with Cryptic Labs ensures that our digital ID stands as a fortress of protection, with end-to-end encryption and advanced technologies like zero-knowledge proofs. Furthermore, we are continuously striving to expand and enhance the array of auxiliary services available to our digital residents. And I appreciate again the suggestions that we can now look at that Mr. Buterin has raised for us. In addition to our digital residency program, we have partnered with Ripple to launch a limited Palau stablecoin project. And this just happened the latter half of this year. In addition to our to this launch, the stablecoin project is a very significant move for us forward. And again, as many of you might have been here a day or two, you may have experienced some difficulty with making payments. Mr. Buterin referred to payment systems in his discussion earlier. And this is really the challenge that we're trying to address. We believe and we've seen through the initial part of this pilot project the success that can be brought to Palau because of this initiative. The PSC offers an alternative, cost-efficient payment method, sidestepping the often higher fees associated with traditional banking systems. And this is also a big problem with access. If you've traveled to the Rock Islands or to the north to our bigger island, often you'll come to a store and if you didn't bring enough cash, you may not be able to purchase anything. So this is something that we are really trying to address that really affects the livelihood of our people. The stablecoin also presents an eco-friendly solution, minimizing the need for residents from remote islands to undertake carbon-intensive journeys to the banks. And as you can see, if you pass by some of the gas stations here, gas prices are on the way up. The US dollar-backed Palau stablecoin operates on the XRP ledger, a carbon-neutral blockchain known for its security and efficiency. This small and controlled pilot that we have started involves participation of 200 government employees, 3 local merchants, and aims to provide financial inclusivity for our citizens, offering a cost-effective and eco-friendly alternative. And these benefits are something that we are seeing based on the early results of our project. We have seen the use cases in which participants set up their digital wallets successfully, and the distributed Palau stablecoin being used for transactions with local vendors. These vendors in turn have successfully been able to initiate requests to redeem the Palau stablecoin for US dollars through the ministry. Palau's journey into the digital realm from our digital residency program to our stablecoin project signifies our commitment to innovation and progress. We look forward to the continued evolution of our nation in this digital age. I thank you again for the opportunity to speak here today.
Yes, so
Thank you, Mr. Your Excellency and the Minister of Finance for sharing all the updates, exciting updates of the digital residency and stablecoin of Palau. And the floor is open for 2 questions if anybody wants to ask questions about Palau's digital projects. No one?
We have one here.
Hello. Hello, Minister. Thank you for your talk. My name is Vin Armani here with the folks from CNMI. Thank you very much. Could you just expand a little more? For digital residents, what are the additional things related to visas in terms of tourists? Does it give any additional capabilities in terms of working, establishing businesses? Where is it at, and then where are you expected to go with that?
Thank you, Ben. Very interesting question. And one of the things that we found out with the digital residency program and the Palau stablecoin project is people take these things forward in ways that you didn't expect. One of the first benefits that was afforded to our digital residents actually came from the business community, where in pulling out a copy of, well, actually the digital residency physical card, the hotel said, well, oh, you have that, I'll give you a discount at the hotel. So that was an immediate benefit that was considered to be offered, but hadn't been developed by our office. So I think there are those kind of opportunities that have happened that are a pleasant surprise. Other benefits that we expect, especially for our visitors, will probably come from the interaction between the digital residency program and the Palau stablecoin project, where we can harmonize the customer experience for the visitors that come here, both in terms of engaging with government and also in engaging with the business community. And we think these are the benefits that we're looking for, a way to promote economic growth at very cost-effective and environmentally friendly ways. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another question. Can you bring the mic? Yeah. And then we'll send the senator for the last one.
What is the best way for digital residents to support and contribute on the programs?
This is an exciting area that we are looking at with the digital residency program. We do have in our legislation something called the Adopt a Meter. As I've said, the rising cost of fuel has really impacted our community. And we're starting to see an increase in immigration from Palau, which is making it more difficult to promote the development of the country when we don't have people here for that purpose. So I think this is something we're really hoping that we can leverage. One area that we are focusing on, and the reason why we support the Blockchain Society, is it's going to take all of us raising the level of understanding and knowledge. And we think that this is something that our digital residents contribute. Say, lecturing in the schools, providing training programs, or just having discussions with people, because it's very new to us. Just recently, we were able to bring the submarine fiber optic cable to Palau and bring our communication standard up to a point where we can actually consider these sort of digital initiatives. And we hope you can come along with the ride with us. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
We have a question from the senator from Senator David Paul from the Marshall Islands.
Our brother from the Marshall Islands, yes.
Mr. Minister, thank you, and I'd like to congratulate you for your vision, your leadership, especially on these two projects. I mean, we are just in awe in watching you guys taking off, and we're very grateful for your vision and your leadership in this space. My question is very simple. I just want more of a curiosity more than anything else. Is on the stablecoin program, is to redeem the stable coin that you are being given, and I'm just wondering where does the repository kept? Is it with the Ministry of Finance, or is it in a private financial institution as a redeemable option for you to exchange the digital coin?
Thank you, Senator. Very good question. Our system is quite simple. The Palau stablecoin is the interface, and it's all a matter of uploading or purchasing, minting stablecoin with money that comes from the banking institutions. And if you're not aware, our program is really just a tokenization of the dollar, converting the dollar into a form that's easily transmittable and accessible by anyone. So it mints into the stable coin, and then it is destroyed and goes back into the banking system, one-to-one relationship. So it's really, again, a way of providing a very efficient and effective payment system. And just some background, I see personally, the FinTech Initiative is really one of the President's platform programs. And I'm happy to be in charge of that program and working with some excellent people, very capable people, to really bring this program to light. But I think the future, or at least the immediate future of the stable coin will be coordinating with the other countries in the Pacific like ourselves who use the United States dollar. And I'm speaking directly to our friends in the Marshall Islands and in the Federated States of Micronesia. I think we could do a little bit more collaboration to make this happen a lot quicker. We do work together through various other ministerial functions, and I think this is a subject that maybe we should bring up more and collaborate on. Thank you, Senator.
I think we have run out of time for questions, so we'll proceed with the program. But before we continue, may we all please recognize the presence of our Minister of Tourism and Development, Mr. Ngirait Mutul, is with us this morning. Thank you, Minister, for joining us today.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you everyone for the amazing questions and exchanges here. We're so excited for the next step of all the digital transformation of Palau. So next we have a panel, and it's the Zuzalu panel. It's called Zuzalu, the Boundless Beyond, to talk about the crypto enable new governance of the digital nomad track initiated by Talungab. So we're gonna set the stage, and on the panel, I will be moderating it because I'm also one of the Zuzalu members, and we have Vitalik Buterin on the panel, Mr. Vitalik, and also Maggie Chen, Partnerships of ETH Global, and we have Ali Zong. Please please come onto the stage, former CEO of Nike. Yes. And also Nicole Sam, yes, the core contributor of Zuzalu. And we are also having Lawrence Ion zooming in remotely from Burning Man at the moment, if he's able to get his internet. he just texted me, said internet has maybe some little bit of a spotty problem, so we will just carry on with our panel. So, so Tuzalu is a project that's initiated by a few of you here, especially Vitalik. And I would like to perhaps first ask Vitalik to tell us about Tuzalu. What is it? The name doesn't mean anything, but what is Tuzalu actually?
Sure. No, the name intentionally does not mean anything in any language.
Can you make it closer? I don't think the
Ding, ding, ding.
Meow meow.
Okay, yeah. So what is Tuzalu? Basically, it's in what we called an experimental pop-up city. So the core idea is to bring together 200 people from a combination of a couple of different spaces. A lot of Ethereum people, a lot of people interested in either longevity or other kind of branches of biotech. Some people from synthetic biology, some COVID researchers. Also, people just interested in like the topics of new forms of governance in general. And like some people from the Vienna rationality community, and there's like a longer list. And basically bring people these people together to just stay in one place for 2 months, and basically just to see what happens out of that, right? The core, well, I think that the core idea here is that there has been a lot of excitement around this idea of creating new cities or creating new societies, or like bringing online communities offline and similar kinds of ideas. And a lot of people have written about this from different angles, and the goal is to try to make a version of that that tries to really bring the conversation from just very abstract discussion into reality, and try to see what is a concrete implementation of that, and like what would that actually look like in the real world, just to help build more knowledge about where it makes sense to go from there. So, like, we've done hacker houses before, and hacker houses often last many years, but they only have up to 10 or 20 people. We've done conferences before. Conferences have thousands of people, but they only last a week. And so the idea is to try to push a little bit further in both directions, right? And have 200 people actually stay in for 2 months. And this is, a big enough jump that it's not something that's really been done much before, but at the same time, it's still manageable enough that a group of people can just come together and just do it, right? So that's where the idea behind Tuzalu came from. And in terms of what it was, basically, there's a lot of a big part of it was basically just this kind of open, long intellectual salon. Like there were just discussions about all kinds of interesting topics on all of the areas that interested people. A lot of a kind of cross-pollination between people who came from different directions, but also a lot of trying to actually put the different ideas into practice, right? So ZooPass was one big example. On the health side, there were a lot of things that try to intentionally make it easier to have a healthy lifestyle, including exercise, including food, but also including things like taking personalized measurements, and some more advanced things. And basically, trying to see what kinds of things in all these spaces can we do as a community that you can't as easily do as one person, right? So that was the core, and the 2 months actually came and actually happened, and people generally had a good time in Montenegro, and now there's actually multiple spin-offs of Tuzalu happening in various places, and we're looking forward to seeing what the whole concept turns into.
Thank you, Vitalik. I was in Tuzalu, invited to go to Tuzalu too. There was April and May, I think started with end of March, in Montenegro. And there were 200 of us, like Vitalik said, co-live, and then we co-work, and we created a lot of different magics together, projects and softwares and so on. So, and I met a lot of you, and we became friends afterwards. I'm just like wondering, how do you actually select who goes to Zuzalu, and how do you actually engage them? Because they are from all over the world. They are experts in AI and new governance and anything. How do you decide that? How do you actually reach out and all that? Because Zuzalu wasn't advertised before.
Yeah, I can speak to how we did invites this time around. Given it was like first time doing the event, no one had heard of us, and all we had was this little PDF that we made of what Zuzalu was. We sent it out to the people that we wanted to invite, and surprisingly people came because it honestly looked pretty sketchy from afar. Like you get this random invitation from a person you don't know to go to Montenegro for 2 months. But through like various forms of verification, people decided that, okay, this is legitimate. But this time around, we chose like a couple tracks to focus around. So Ethereum technology, ZK technology, biotech, decentralized science, and decentralized governance. Those were kind of like the floating core themes. So we tried to choose like people who are working in those spaces, people from like researchers to scientists to actual founders as well. And we just did like outreach. We would pick one person in the field and we would trust them to do the curation from their forth. They'd be like, oh, like I think these 10 people are great. And from those 10, we would select more and more people. So this time around, it was a very manual selection process, but we were just kind of looking for people who were intellectually curious to the relevant topics. Also like low ego, low status that like actually just wanted to come for the event and not for any like ulterior motives. So we kept it very simple this time around, and I think it worked out well. Like we ended up with a really good group of people, and they really carried what the event was.
You want to add on to that, maybe? Okay. Yeah, so I would indeed receive like a random email, and then just decided to book my flight, and it flew 24 hours just to get there, and then stay in this like really lovely town, Tiva in Montenegro. And I also noticed that in Zuzalu, a lot of us are actually digital nomads. So we work on the computer, we came from all over the place, but then we actually started to really see each other in real life and spend time together for 2 months. So I want to ask all of you, how is it like to really live with 200 people that you did not know before, and they were awesome, and they were all from different fields, together and work together in a place for 2 months?
Yeah, I think it was really unique to do that, especially after everyone went virtual during the COVID era. So it was really magical to be able to spend time with 200 people plus for 2 months.
Yeah, so before this, I was also digital nomading for about a year, and this was the first time I was able to stay in a place for a long period of time where I can develop like a structure to my day, like have laundry, have like a consistent workout schedule, and also be able to walk outside and see like new people every single day and talk to interesting people. It was just like such a focal point for all of the sorts of people that I would want to meet day to day, and it was crazy. So it was like very overwhelming in some ways, like you get to do so much every single day, but yeah, very exciting. Like that still feels so surreal now that we've gone back to normal life where you only do like one thing a day. That's very different. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just adding on, I think like a key topic or a key word that comes to mind when we think about Zuzalu is actually community. I think every single aspect of Zuzalu was around like this concept of community. So first thing in the morning when you wake up and you go to breakfast, there's always someone new to meet at breakfast because that was almost like a focal point for you to meet new other people. And the conversations that you actually have are not so much like, hey, this is what I do, this is my title, and this is like what I'm actually focused on in the industry. It's more like, hey, like, what is your MBTI? Or like, hey, you know, what is your favorite fruit? And a lot of these conversations that came out of just like different community organized events or just events that were happening at Zuzalu were actually very natural, very serendipitous. And I think that was sort of like a key highlight of Zuzalu for all of us. It's just the concept that like you don't have to have any intentions going into it, but you get so much out of it just because of the people that were there. And also there's so many things that are being run kind of like in a decentralized format. So people can organize and self-organize events without like kind of surrounding the main events as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening and there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to manage your time.
Yeah, so something that Maggie mentioned briefly is the serendipity. I think when there's a lot of serendipity, when there's a lot of intentional serendipity, a lot of innovation happens.
Yes, I did feel that. So in short, to me, then it sounds like Zuzalu is 200 really smart, curious, intellectually curious people from all over the world coming to a very remote place in a country that most people did not hear about before, and live there for 2 months and bring impact to the country and geek out on all the selected topics, CKP, AI, community, and all that. So, and then products happens and all these things, amazing things happen. So, I was also curious, how did you guys decide on the topics of Zuzalu? I understand that Zuzalu is a fairly decentralized community. Everybody can like decide on a topic, but how did you decide the core topic for each week?
Yeah, well, so I think the way that this started was that there were like a couple of these major themes where I think part of it is just like ultimately, you know, we're Ethereum people, and so Ethereum is going to be the center. And then, I mean, things like bio and like interest in governance, like they just have a pretty high overlap with that space, but are also a somewhat different group. But then from there, it started off being a couple of sort of officially designated like weeks or targeted to particular events, but then people just started coming in and they started like expanding and creating parts of their own schedule, and it sort of provisionally slowly expanded from there.
I see, sounds amazing, because I was there too, I experienced that. And so in April and May, when we were in Montenegro, we really did create a lot of things. I'm also wondering what kind of impact had Zuzalu brought to Montenegro, the benefits and all these things. Can maybe Vitalik can share?
I mean, first of all, it brought 200 people to a resort during a time when it would have otherwise been empty. So it you know, contributed to the economy in a way that just that just otherwise would not have you know, existed. And I think for some of the people in the restaurant, like it was a trading opportunity that would have otherwise been you know, like less paid and a lot more boring for them. So there's like that basic kind of value, but there were some kind of longer lasting connections, I think, that were made between the Zuzalu community and like different people in Montenegro. There were some Montenegrins who actively participated in Zuzalu, and some like locally focused AI and like other applications that got made. There was some interactions with the local university students, interactions with the local government, and because the local governments had been interested in being crypto friendly already, and so they were basically gave them opportunity to meet and get to know people that would actually you know, like help them on doing that right. So I think you know, it was valuable in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, I also know that after just 2 months of Zuzalu in Montenegro, the entire country's GDP increased, and the country started to implement a lot of digital projects, digital residencies one, and CBDC and all that afterwards. So it did bring a lot of impact, positive impact to the country. So, since we're in Palau, and I know that we had discussed this, if we want to do a Zuzalu in Palau, operationally, what do each of you perceive or think that you need from Palau, and what Palau needs to provide to have Zuzalu to be operationally functional here?
I guess from like a base layer of operations, we had 200 people come to our event as residents, and over 1,000 people came last time as visitors. So there just needs to be enough space to accommodate everyone, enough food, and one of like the key things we want to do at Zuzalu is build in convenience layers for healthy living. So having like a lot of food options, having healthy food options be available to this many people is kind of a stress infrastructurally. So yes, finding a venue. So when we go like location scouting, we have such a long list of things that we want to hit, which is like, how many restaurants are there in the vicinity? Is there nature in the area, which of course Palau is beautiful for? Is it price reasonable? Because we tried to keep this more like affordable for people to attend and not have price be a barrier. That might be hard for somewhere like Palau where flights are more expensive, and so is possibly accommodation, but those are all things that we can find workarounds for. But yeah, I think that was like the only concerns we have operationally is perhaps there isn't enough like infrastructure to meet the scale of things that we do. But I think outside of that, like it has like very unique culture. We usually come here as relatively remote, which is both like a good thing and a bad thing. Like That way, even when our event gets out, there won't be a ton of people crashing and security won't be as much of an issue. So yeah, I think Palau is like a potentially interesting place we can consider as a potential next Zuzulu location.
I think something that's also very unique about where Zuzulu was this time is that, like Nicole mentioned, it was sort of in a remote area, but also close enough to like other small towns that residents could go to on the weekends. So I think Palau, I think like if we do Zulu in Palau, I think something that's really important to consider is just like the privacy, the security, and also just like a good balance between like allowing people to really just focus on their work, but also a mix of like having other activities that could be done on the weekends, but not overcrowded so much that it becomes sort of like another exact city. I think that was like the point, is to not have it become like in a big city or have it become something that is like exact replica of like a city. It was more of like our own smaller village that we could really be able to curate the culture of like what the Zuzulu experience looks like. So I think that's something that's really important for sure.
One thing to note is that Zuzulu is it's an experiment, right? So just because like there were certain parameters to the first Zuzulu doesn't mean the second or future Zuzulus have to be exactly like that. So when it comes to size, when it comes to the topics, when it comes to a lot of the more detailed things, I think it's more of a collaboration with like the Zuzulu organizers and the local community rather than just like something that has to be repeated over and over again.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Zuzulu is an ongoing evolution of a decentralized efforts. And even though in the first Zuzulu it was a success and a lot of people want to repeat that, but I can see that the Zuzulu can be just go to all kinds of places and unimaginable style. So to each one of you, made you, actually Batali didn't share last time. What is Zuzulu to you, and what do you see Zuzulu become in the future, in the next step? Using one sentence to describe what is Zuzulu to you.
That's difficult because I think one of the takeaways from the first one is kind of I don't know, in the sense that like the form factor of like 200 people actually staying there for 2 months and like being an experiment seems to be really successful. But at least like for me, a big part of it from the beginning was to like basically use that as a stepping stone and to try to get more insight into like what actually makes even more sense. And that's like right now, like the answer still feels unclear. Like it feels like it was the start of the experimentation and not the end. So maybe that is the answer for me.
Yeah, I don't know how easy it is to do this in one sentence, but I'll try to keep it short. I think Zuzulu is a really unique like breeding destination of just like all sorts of talent. So I think it doesn't really matter like what you come from, what your previous experience is, and what your starting point is. I think when you come to Zuzulu, you could be like, it could be a restart, it could be like the blankest version of yourself. You can bring in previous experiences if you want to, but I think it's really like a starting point, like Vitalik said, for a lot of different opportunities and a lot of things that you want to do. And it's like a place where you can really explore different things and be kind of like strategically positioned in a place to actually do those things, or even think about things that you maybe never thought about before.
I think Zuzulu is very different to everyone. What Zuzulu is to me was a very unique social structure where I could facilitate this lifelong learning. Like I could explore and discover new things all the time and consistently talk to new people about things I've never thought of before. And it's also an amazing place to develop very strong bonds and personal relationships. This is the best place I've had outside of school to just make new friends. I think it's very unique and yeah, it's hard to describe and I think it'll constantly change.
Yeah, for me, I think they already covered everything I wanted to say, but in addition, I wanted to say that it felt ephemeral yet permanent, right? A lot of the, like we knew that at the end of 2 months, most people were gonna leave and go across the world everywhere, but at the same time, a lot of the bonds felt very permanent, like a lot of the people I met there, a lot of the connections, they felt very permanent, and a lot of the lessons learned as well were, at the moment, they felt like temporary, but then I think we learned a lot of lessons that will help those lessons live on for future Zuzulus.
Thank you. To me, Zuzulu is an infinite opportunity, a tribe that I can meet people that I can learn from and bond with, and a place where I can say anything creative and nobody will tell me, oh, don't do that. People instead will say, let's try it, sounds good. And I love the decentralization of that too. So,
I wanted to add one more thing. I think it was a very awesome experiment where digital governance and digital communities interact with physical communities and how to collaborate between those two.
that's a very, very good point, because Zuzulu was a collection of digital nomad in a physical space together. So before we answer some questions from the audience, I have last fun question to ask everyone. What's your MBTI? I'm ENFP.
INTJ.
Oh, yes. I'm ESFP, like very E, but for the other three, I'm very much in the middle.
I'm INFJ.
I'm INT and then the JP keep flipping back and forth.
Well, thank you. So now we would like to ask some questions from the audience. I apologize that I may not see you when you raise your hand, but other people can.
We have a question back here.
Hello, I'm a student at Mizenti High School, and my question is, what was the age range of the people there?
I think it was like a pretty big mix. Like we had a speaker that was 17 years old, so she was still in high school, and we had up to like maybe 70, 80, I'm not even sure. There's like a huge age range. I would say the average age is late 20s, but we had a really big group of young people there too.
Thank you.
So if Zuzulu is to come to Palau, what would you Palauians like to see that we do or interact with? What would you like to learn or see happening from Zuzulu?
We have a question from Senator.
Thank you. Just wondering if Zuzulu is as a DAO.
Well, the thing with being a DAO is that like you have to actually commit to like the governance and like what is the scope of the thing and what isn't the scope of the thing, and like it requires a certain like level of formalization, which I think is like eventually important for something like this, but it's like important to like. The thing that's much worse than not having a DAO is being stuck in a DAO that's seated with the wrong structure, right? Like, you know, like you don't want to be, the one thing I've said from day one is that like we're not launching a token, right? Like, you know, like if Zuzulu had been, you know, like 43% owned by Paradigm in A16Z, I think it would have been, you know, a very different vibe, right? Yeah, so I mean, I'm just like waiting to see, you know, like what governance, you know, like ideas people propose. I actually think there have been some proposals recently that I haven't looked at yet, but I think it's, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we do need to use our own technology, so I'm, you know, looking forward to the DAO existing.
But I also think that it was kind of an experiment to see if there were additional governance things beyond what people have been doing, like existing with DAOs, right? So expanding on what DAOs can do, potentially, and just like thinking outside of the box. So.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for coming, speaking this morning. On the concept of Zuzulu, I'm very ignorant to it, but could it potentially become something like, you know how we have digital nomads where people go from space to space? Could this become a digital city, nomadic city, a digital nomadic city that moves from place to place? Or do you envision it staying where your experimental location was? We talk about Palau now as perhaps being a location for Zuzulu per se, or would it be something in your mind where other places could construct something similar and then they establish a sister city partnership in a sense? Like for example, instead of being like Pupulu for Palau, for instance, right? Kukulu for CNMI, and then they all have some type of similarities but differences, and then they all coordinate together. What structure did you have in mind at this early stage with Zuzulu? And it's such a unique and interesting comment. I'd just like to congratulate you guys on the brainchilds behind this concept.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, actually, yeah, because a lot of like historical nomadic societies and tribes did move together as groups, right? Like you'd have groups of, I mean, like roughly like Dunbar's number size, like 100 or 200 people that move around between different places together. And there's a lot to that model, right? Like, you know, you have novelty in your physical location, but you still, like keep your relationships across your life. I think for this, it's, you know, as we crypto people like to say, it's still early days, and you know, like lots of things going forward are possible. So, you know, I guess things like this may well end up happening. And I mean, the other thing is, you know, we don't need permission from any of us to start, you know, Pupulu or so, you know, if he wants to, you just, you know, like start this on your own, you're very welcome to do that too.
Yeah, I definitely think we don't want to own the trademark, and we've been very encouraging of forks. Like, we want people to spin out. So, you know, in the future, it could look like that there's 10 different ongoing Zuzulus at the same time under different names. You find the one that fits you. They can be slightly different in variation. Like, we can explore together, and if something doesn't work, we roll it back in one. If something works well in another, we adopt that everywhere. So yeah, this is all up for grabs. And in the future, like, who knows, maybe we'll build a permanent city. Maybe someone else will. So yeah, I think it's read on for more information. No spoilers now.
I think there's actually been quite a number of people who were at Zuzulu that have already been starting to plan like the future Zuzulus, or like there has been other digital nomad cities, for example, like Prospera in Honduras, which was like one of them, and they're actually building like a real like city that is actually kind of like has their own jurisdiction. So we've definitely seen a lot of people starting to already plan for like what post Zuzulu looks like according to their own terms, and I think it's definitely something that we want to encourage because it really depends on like what you're looking for, and you can really just define the Zuzulu experience according to what you want it to look like.
Thank you.
We have last question.
Have you heard of Satoshi Island? It was incorporated as a DAO in the Marshall Islands and is actually physically located in the Solomon Islands. And I think they're doing the same thing as far as building this island that they bought for digital nomads to go and do all these things that they're doing. So in the Marshalls, we lead the world in registering DAOs, and we're open for non-profit DAOs and also for-profit DAOs. And we've actually introduced legislations, and we've recognized, I think, close to 100 DAOs right now have been registered in the Marshalls, and one of them is actually Satoshi Island. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. That's awesome.
I haven't heard of Satoshi Island before, but that's very cool.
We're going to have Zulu in the Marshall Islands soon.
Anything's possible.
All right, thank you. Is that all? Is that all? I guess next, not only we will have in Palau, we will also probably move to Marshalls. So thank you, everyone, and I hope to continue this conversation. And at this trip, we will then explore possibilities and feasibilities of enabling this digital nomad tribe here and make Palau as one of the homes for many of us. Also, another thing, not only there are Zuzulu members on stage, there are also a lot of Zuzulu members in the invited speakers down there, so you can just talk to a lot of the Web3 people here. Actually, many of them are Zuzulu contributors. Okay, so Well, that was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the panel. Now we have the next speaker, who is also a speaker that we are very honored to have here, traveling all the way from New York City. And we will welcome James Wallace, who is the VP, Vice President of CBDC from Ripple, which is a company that is instrumental for enabling Palau stablecoin project. And James Wallace will share some of the, not only the Palau stablecoin and also the CBDC vision, and also what it is a CBDC. I know a lot of Palauans here are curious and interested to hear that. James?
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. Okay, good morning, everybody. Good to be here. This is, I think, my third time visiting Palau, and the first time I came was straight after. It was almost the first flight after COVID. So it was things one flight in and one flight out per week, and no tourists, and there's not much going on. So it's just amazing to be here and see so many people. I'm really looking forward to the discussions over the next 3 days. I've been involved in the blockchain space since about 2014 or 2015 in a few different companies. But I think you've got a great group of people here, and looking forward to the discussion. So I was asked to spend about 20 minutes talking about what we're doing with CBDCs and stablecoins, and I'll talk a little bit about the Palau project as well. There'll be plenty of opportunity over the next 2 days during the breaks and during the social events and the boat trips and the rock islands and everything to have a more one-on-one discussions as well. So first fail is the clicker. There we go. I'm not going to dwell on Ripple, but I know most of you have probably heard of Ripple, but there's a lot of misinformation about Ripple, so I thought I'd just baseline as what is Ripple and what Ripple isn't. So, Ripple is a company based in San Francisco. We have almost 1,000 employees now across 15 different global centers. We're most well known for our payments network, but we have a lot of other initiatives working underway. So we have, as you can see on the chart, we have experts in a lot of different topics. A lot of deep crypto people, and then a lot of people from traditional finance. So it's quite a mix of different backgrounds in the company. We're really focused on blockchain for enterprise. So a little different from some of the other blockchain organizations. We see the finance world, both TradFi and also coming into Web3 and DeFi world as the area that we're focused on. My specific role is digital currencies, so CBDCs and stablecoins. I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. We have the payment network I mentioned, and then we work with, we're one of the contributors, and we run, I think 4 or 5 nodes out of close to 200 on the XRP ledger. So we don't own the ledger. It's run as a decentralized network, but we do use that technology. In fact, we've used a lot of this technology in the CBDC solution that we've built. Okay, so anyone from Palau will probably recognize the second picture on this chart here. I use this chart quite a lot in speeches. It's really, the point is to show that money has evolved over time. The way that people transact and exchange value has changed dramatically from the barter system through to physical objects like the stones, like the rice stones, which we'll see some of those later on today. All the way across the spectrum there. And just to show my age, I first started working in technology when digital checks was the thing. So I think if I'd been at the Montenegro event, I would have taken the average age up a little bit, but hopefully not too high. And then we get to digital money. So digital money is is the future. Right? I think every single person in this room would agree with that. And it's because it has certain characteristics. Physical money has limitations. Right? You have to, if it's cash, you have to print it, you have to distribute it. You have cash handling services. You could lose it, and all sorts of things like that. Whereas digital money has a whole series of characteristics that are just way better than traditional money. I'm not going to go into, there's more than there are on the chart, there's 4 there, but there's a lot of other ones. These are just some of the ones that I think are most relevant. Cost and speed is probably the most significant one from an economic perspective. Be able to do transactions that settle instantly. The traditional finance world, you make a payment, the money is not settled instantly. It could be hours, days, or even weeks, depending on the transaction. So that's just not okay in this digital world. The cost as well. So the cost of doing a credit card transaction for the merchant is typically 2 or 3%. The cost of doing a cross-border payment, remittances. So people sending money, say from the US to another country in Asia, can be as high as 20%. Right? And that is just not, it's almost criminal, right? It's just way too much, not acceptable. You need to be able to do things lower cost and faster. You also need to make things, financial services and payments, accessible to people, right? It shouldn't be only for certain people that have access to financial services. It should be a right of everyone to have access to basic financial services, whether that be payments or the ability to store money or to get a loan as well. So accessibility is a key thing. And then of course you need that underlying security. I mean, at the end of the day, people have to trust that the system will do what it says on the label, that their money is safe and secure, and that they can transact in it in a safe and secure way. Now, not all digital currencies are created equal. This is kind of my favourite chart. Depending on who I'm talking to, I kind of put a different angle on it. There are basically 4 groups that I talk about. There are native cryptocurrencies, right? So you have Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and the list goes on and on. You have, that's on one scale. On the other end of the scale, you have central bank digital currencies. So central bank digital currency is digital money, typically created using the same technology as crypto, so decentralized technology. Not always, I mean there are some exceptions. So in China they have a very extensive pilot underway which uses more centralized technology, but generally blockchain and DLT is being preferred as the technology. But that's completely opposite to crypto. I mean, crypto is generally totally decentralized. In the case of Bitcoin, there's no ownership. It's a mystery, right? Which is also a benefit. Central bank digital currency is issued by the central bank, which is typically part of the government, or in some cases not part of the government. Basically, it's the central bank. Their mission in life is financial stability in that country. So a very different, perspective on life and the financial world between the crypto world and the central banks. And in the middle, you've got other asset types that have developed over the last couple of years. So you have stable coins, which are more crypto focused, so some of the algorithmic stable coins. And then you have, I think this is going to be a big growth area, you have regulation coming in around stable coins, and we're going to see a lot more commercial banks issuing their own stable coins for various different purposes. Banks are also looking to tokenize deposits because, again, the characteristics of digital money is a much more efficient model than traditional money. So I don't think there'll be a winner. These are all going to coexist, right? You're going to have, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but in today's system, if you take 100% of the money in circulation, central bank money is less than 10%. That's the amount of money that's been issued by a central bank, whether that's cash or whether that's central bank money used for wholesale purposes. Crypto is less than 1%, and the rest of it is commercial bank money. So in the future, what will that look like? I don't know, but they're all going to exist, and all for different good reasons. Just slight quick question. Seems we have a lot of blockchain people in the audience. Hopefully you'll all agree with these points here. But why is blockchain good for payments, right? I mean, a lot of people, naysayers in the industry go, oh, blockchain is like a solution looking for a problem, right? I don't agree with that at all. And you can see here, there's some very, very significant reasons why blockchain is good. I think I mentioned, settlement in real time. That is huge, right? The old world financial system cannot do that. It's very expensive. Resiliency and security. No single point of failure. These are things that the old legacy systems just can't do. And the other one that I haven't really listed on here is it's so much easier for other participants to join into a blockchain environment than it is a legacy system. So legacy systems are centralized, they're run by one company, all behind their firewall. If you want to be able to, as a third party, add some features or functions on top of that, it's almost impossible. In the world of blockchain DLT, that's exactly what it's designed to do. So you can have an environment, like where I work, where you have a central bank issue as digital currency, and then they allow the private sector to add different use cases on top of it, right? And so we're going to see thousands and thousands and thousands of different potential use cases around digital money, facilitated by governments and central banks making it legal to do that, because unfortunately there is a law of the land, and there's there are regulations that have to be followed. So, very quickly, hang on just a second. Yeah, okay. So just moving on to a bit more about CBDC specifically, and then Palau. We created a platform called the Ripple CBDC platform. It's really designed for two things. It's actually designed for central banks to issue digital currency, so digital fiat, if you like, so the currency of the land. But it's also designed to issue stable coins. So it can be either or, and then it can be, these tokens or these currencies can be issued on a private ledger or on the public XRP ledger. Now the private ledger is important in the world of central banks because they're a little bit further behind than a lot of people in this room, and they just are not comfortable with putting their assets on a public blockchain. That, I think, may change over time, may not. So what we did is we took the XRP ledger, which is a ledger that's designed for payments from the ground up, designed to be very low transaction costs, very fast, and we basically created a private version. So each of the countries that we're working with is using a private ledger for their currency. So in the case of Palau, we're working with the Ministry of Finance. A few of the projects that we have that we've announced out of our longer list, the Montenegro, we're working there. And in each instance, it's a private ledger. So that's really these are the sort of the building blocks, if you like. There's an issuer, which is the minting process, which is how you actually physically create the money, and then goes down to the ledger itself, and then of course wallets. Wallets are what are used by both banks, corporations and individuals to store and transact with their currency. Now talk about Palau for a minute. It's great. I had the president teed it up a little bit. Alan teed it up a bit. The minister Dewey teed it up a bit. Vitalik mentioned it. So it's like you guys should know everything about this by the end of today, right? Because everyone will have been talking about it. So what's different about Palau to the CBDC world, right? So central bank digital currency, the clue is in the name. It's issued by a central bank. Palau does not have a central bank. Okay, Palau uses the US dollar as the national currency, does not have a central bank, so you can't issue a CBDC in Palau because there's no central bank. So what we did in discussions with His Excellency the President and the Finance Minister was said, well, okay, we'll work on a stable coin. It'll be a government-issued stablecoin denominated in USD, backed one-for-one with US dollar reserves. So that's basically what we've done. We think it's the first government-issued USD stablecoin globally. So congratulations to Palau, that's amazing. It is, as mentioned by the Finance Minister, Mr. Adui, it's in the pilot stage. We're basically testing out the concepts and the technology at this point. It's the full life cycle, so that means that the stablecoin is minted, is created, is then distributed, in this case, at least for the first phase of the pilot, to a number of government employees, about 200 or so. And then they can go with their wallet and go to 3 different store groups in Palau and make purchases at the point of sale. So then the stablecoin is transferred from their wallet to the wallet of the merchant. They hold the stablecoin, and then in this particular model, because it's to test out the whole life cycle, the store can then redeem that back to the Ministry of Finance to US dollars. So it goes full circle. The vision, though, is much more than that. The vision is that eventually, as this becomes more widespread, you won't have a need to redeem back to US dollars, right? So the stablecoin will be created. It could potentially, in the future, be, used as the predominant currency, with cash declining. You could imagine that people get paid in the stablecoin. They transact in the stablecoin. They don't need to cash it in and out. It will just circulate around in the economy the same way that cash does today. And then even beyond that, you start thinking about other use cases. You go, okay, well, tourists coming in. Some of us are here on business and some of us are on here as tourists, or most of us are probably in this room half and half at the moment. You could be, you have to buy stablecoin, or you get you get a better deal if you go buy into stablecoin. So from an economic point of view, what you want is to have as much money being transferred into stablecoin as possible, and that being circulated as wide as possible. And then you can go beyond the borders of Palau. In the future, if you make the stablecoin more broadly accessible, you can get to a situation where it's being used for trade, for business purposes, cross-border. And that, I think, is part of the vision for Palau. It's early days, as we say in the crypto world. But the vision is there, and this project we have at the moment really is a stepping stone to get us along that route. And it's using because it's a stable coin and because it's not a central bank, we decided to use the public XRP ledger rather than a private ledger. The advantage of that in this case for Palau is, as you start thinking about these other use cases with different participants using it and potentially linking XRP ledger to other use cases on the Ethereum blockchain or other different L1 or L2 chains, it makes it a lot easier than Palau has more options than a government which has a central bank which has a much more conservative and much more restrictive use of their currency. So just to wrap up, digital currency is a groundbreaking technology as it comes to payments globally, whether it be domestically in a country like Palau, whether it be cross-border. We're seeing about 90% of countries are actively looking or experimenting in this world of CBDC. It's a question of timing. I mean, it will happen. It could be 1 or 2 years before about maybe 20 or 25% of countries have a formal digital currency. Then there'll be probably the next sort of 5 years beyond that. So it takes time, right? It's governments and central banks are not the fastest organisations on the planet. They're very conservative, and they have to be, right? Because they have a responsibility, a fiscal responsibility in their country. This sort of concluding chart is, you can't just look at, say, the technology and go, oh, the technology is cool, we can do these things cheaper and faster, this is awesome, and it's wonderful, and that's great. You've got to look at it in the context of, you know, the regulatory environment, you know, the policymakers and lawmakers. You know, some countries are not even sure if digital money issued by a government would be legal tender. So there's some boring stuff that needs to be sort of dealt with behind the scenes, but, you know, policy changes is an enabler. The technology is an enabler. The most important thing in all of this is that whatever is put out in terms of digital currency is that it's usable, right? It has to be, people have to see value in it. They have to say, okay, I can do this, I can make a payment faster than I could before, or for less money, or I can automate a payment. I can have something that, you know, I can do relief fund money and send it out to people and make sure it's only spent on certain types of goods and services. So you can program both the money and the payments. So those are what will determine whether these projects are successful or not, is how much people use them, right? So it's no good just having cool technology. That's a waste of time, right? You've got to have value that's added, and that's where I think the you know, the basics of a CBDC or a stablecoin, which is, you know, to be able to transfer money, you know, retail payments or wholesale payments or cross-border payments, that is just the very basics, right? If I look back in 5 years and say, hey James, you know, how successful have we been doing at rolling out CBDCs and stablecoins? And the answer is, oh yeah, we've replaced cash, and that's it, that will be a fail, right? The opportunity here is to have this core technology be what I call a platform for innovation, right? So you put the basic plumbing in, the public sector does that, and then let the private sector have at it and just, you know, go wild creating interesting use cases on top of it. So that's the vision. We're so thrilled to be working here in Palau, as an amazing country. I think the potential here as a country, given the adoption of the technology we're talking about here, and then some of the ideas that were talked about earlier, you know, sort of digital nomads, and people can work from wherever they want these days. I think that is, you know, a perfect storm here for Palau to really sort of take some initiatives over the next few years that are going to change the economy forever. So with that, I would say thank you very much. Do we have time for questions, Elaine?
Yes, questions.
Make them easy.
As many as possible.
Hello, thank you for your talk. My name is Vin Armani. I'm based in Commonwealth of Northern Marianas Islands, and I'm the founder of the company that runs, not yet government issued, we're working on that, but that issues and maintains the stablecoin that's used for digital payments in our cannabis industry. And so there were really, I just wanted to make sure, so I had two questions. First, did you say that the Palau stablecoin is issued on the public XRP ledger?
Yes.
Okay, so that had been a misconception that I had. I guess I was under the impression that it was on the private, so that's great. So with that being said, is Ripple going to be then handling distribution of a spec or SDK specific to Palau stablecoin? Because we certainly in CNMI would like to start developing. We're only a 2-hour flight away. And we have a long historical relationship. So we would love to, you know, leverage some of what we're doing to be able to also participate.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Thank you for the question. So far the projects that we've been working on, you know, each one is a little bit different. So we're building out the products that I mentioned. You know, I just gave the very simple version of it. But yeah, we're in the process of building out like sales development kits and various tooling so that people can be a bit more self-service. On that, we could certainly have a more detailed offline conversation. You know, it's still relatively early in the evolution of these systems, so what we've announced is version 1. I mean, it's up and running and live and doing things, which is great, but we have a roadmap of enhancements that we're working on, and this ability for people to pick this up more as a self-service and develop, develop things on top of what we built and also alongside it, if that makes sense. So, we've got an API structure for people to plug into various different existing systems. So yeah, we can. I don't want to go too deep on all the tech with the whole audience here, but yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. One over here.
Great speech, thank you. I do have a question about, you talk about transaction charge and instant realization of wire transfer things. Not wire transfer, crypto coin. So regarding specifically to a transaction charge, you talk about something range from 2-3% to 20%. What about in these stable coin transactions? What is the fee structure that you would image?
Yeah, so the basic inherent fee structure in the ledger is fractions of a penny. At the end of the day, the people that are operating the payment schemes will be the ones that determine the charge. So we're providing the technology, right? We're not saying to any of our clients how much they should charge their clients, but the basic underlying fee is, I forget the exact number, but it's a small fraction of a penny is a transaction fee on the public ledger.
And one more question about policy establishment. Do you think the government of Palau is ready for the policy, or the policy has been clear?
Well, that's a question for the government, but I know there is some legislation in the works around payments in Palau. I'm not familiar with all the details. And I personally have met with the Congress a couple of times during this journey, but it is a journey, right? There's always education required. The reason we did the pilot relatively small was to get some learnings and then share further. But that would be a good question for the government. I'm not going to represent the government whilst I'm standing here.
Thank you. But one more question.
Okay.
Sorry about
Third
that.
one's a charm. Go for it.
So you mentioned about 3 critical areas as an ecosystem to make this project be successful. One being policy, that you had explained.
Yeah.
The other one being technology, which I believe Ripple has the right technology. And the third one is the application. Find that regard, what do you envision about application would do? And what kind of application would be appreciated?
Yeah, well, again, thank you for the question. And the comment that last chart was not specific to Palau. It's like any of these blockchain projects with digital currency have to have those characteristics, including Palau. We decided to start with retail payments, so that's really the focus right now, which is as an alternative to cash. So, for example, people can transfer their stablecoin to friends and family in other parts of the country that today, if it was cash, they'd need to go by boat. So that's the starting point right now. Beyond that, I think we can see some quite interesting ideas. None of these are committed to yet, but one example, I know that culturally in Palau, people often lend friends and family short-term loans, and also there are donations made to various religious and family events. So we're looking at some ideas around that. So on the lending one, you could imagine a very simple DeFi situation where, if you're a citizen and I need to borrow you some money from you, you can lend me $200, and it can be set up automated so that when I get paid, you get your money back, right? So there's some sort of automation ideas that we're thinking what could be interesting. But again, those are just under discussion right now. Nothing has finally been decided. I think one of the speakers earlier mentioned that in these sorts of projects, you shouldn't be too closed-minded on what you're doing, because sometimes it's other people come up with the ideas. So I think we'll see some interesting suggestions and use cases come out of the pilot. In fact, we're this current phase of the pilot will run another month or two, and part of the process is to get feedback from the users and ideas. So we'd be interested to see what they say.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Vincent. I represent a proposal called Oz in the Philippines. We're actually designing or trying to work on a stablecoin project that actually automates tax collection. Have you done anything in that space to automate tax collection for the government in that area, and if you could share some information?
Yeah, we haven't implemented a project doing that yet, but we have some discussions underway. A very big economy in Europe that's not in the EU anymore is looking at something along the same lines, which is actually, that would be tax collection of the sales tax at the point of sale. I think in most countries the way it works today is you buy something, the sales tax, the merchant collects the tax, and then they have to pay the government every month or 3 months or whatever it is. So that's one of the ideas that's been looked at. I think that's politically quite an interesting one, because at the moment the merchants have this float of money that they can do things with rather than paying out instantly. So, but no, we don't have anything up and running live, but we certainly have had some discussions. It's an interesting use case.
Yeah. How do you go about working with people in that context?
You come and talk to me at the break.
One more question. Hi, Jay.
Good morning, nice to see you again.
Hello? Yeah. So carbon credits is a big topic globally.
Yeah.
And I know Ripple has Ripple Carbon now. If there are initiatives within the Palau ecosystem and they're looking to build, whether it's blue or green carbon credits, how can that fit into the Palau stablecoin?
That's a really good question. I don't have a good answer to that yet. I know there were several carbon initiatives underway, the Blue Ocean work, and as you rightly mentioned, we just announced an investment in a new company called Centigrade, who's looking at data collection and verification around carbon markets. I mean, ultimately, a stablecoin at the end of the day is a currency, right? So just anything you can use a currency for, you can substitute that out and substitute in the stablecoin. The question would be, would there be some unique characteristics of it, some advantage to using the stablecoin versus, say, US dollar? So that's a good one to have to discuss over a cocktail. I'd love some ideas, actually, because I don't have a good answer, but I'd love some ideas in that space.
A question.
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh, at the back. Hi.
Yeah. Thank you for a very good presentation. We're very excited what can happen within Palau and how we can transact. There are so many ways that we can benefit from the stablecoin scheme. But as a consumer of the e-commerce, what I'm interested in is when in the horizon is the possibility of using the stable coin to do the transaction with ordering things outside of Palau.
So this is on, okay. So you mean cross-border payments? Yeah, that's something that we're certainly thinking about. I don't know, there's no decision been made on the timing of that. One of the things that with a government-issued currency like the stablecoin, you have to be very careful on making sure who has access to it, and it's only known, KYC, know your customer. You need to make sure that it's not being used by people that shouldn't be using it. So when it comes to cross-border payments, I think if it's Palauans outside of Palau making payments back into Palau, that might be a logical first step. I don't think there's any decisions been made about wider access to the stablecoin at this point. But no, that's one of the benefits. I mean, cross-border payments, as I mentioned earlier, you know, the typical remittance charge can be, you know, 10 or 20%, which is just criminal, right? I mean, people should be able to send money back, you know, and it costs almost nothing. So, thank you. Thanks for the question. All right, thank you. Elaine, over here. Back to you.
Yes, thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. That's a very, very inspiring talk and also informative Q&A session. I think all of us here really learn a lot from the Palau stablecoin initiatives and also what Ripple has been doing for the world, for the betterment of the payment, cross-border payment. So next, we have a very special guest too. We have Christoph Hebel, the co-founder and CEO of Nomica TriScale, which is a startup company, but Christoph is no short of achievements. He's traveling from Geneva, used to be a diplomat, and also worked for the EU government as well on a lot of tech and crypto technology advisory. And the topic of his talk, which will be very, very interesting after Mr. James Wallace's talk, title as, it's a very long title, From Ecosystem Services to Monitoring Policies, Valuing Palau's Natural Capital as a Backing of CBDC. So that's welcome, Christoph.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Elaine. And yeah, the first correction to my slide obviously is the CBDC has to go with a stable coin. But the concept actually comes from discussions with other countries as well, as specifically the Maldives, which has a central bank, and also other countries that we're working with at this point. So what I want to do is actually kind of bridge a little bit the two topics, or the two big realms that we're talking about this morning. A lot about currencies, about digital currencies and the possibilities of blockchain. Tomorrow we're going to have a lot of conversation about the tokenization, and specifically also the question of sustainability and how the interaction between the blockchain world and the sustainability, let's say the carbon, blue-green carbon world works. And this is what my talk's about. I want to paint a little bit of a vision for you that is bringing in this also the question of sovereignty for Palau, in a sense that my thesis is, and I'm going to say this right up front, is that you are sitting or standing on incredible wealth right now. And I think intuitively this is already being recognized quite seriously by the Palauan people and the Palauan government, namely the natural assets that you have, and you're protecting them, you're stewarding them in a very admirable way. Now the question becomes, in terms of diversification, as His Excellency the President mentioned this morning, diversifying the economy into other fields, there is a big value to be unlocked in those assets. And I think I want to talk about this today with you and take you on that little journey and see how where we can go. Yeah, it doesn't look like we can go anywhere. Is there any way I can advance the slides?
The one on the right.
Yeah, this one I'm hitting here. Where's the receiver?
Yeah, this one.
Pointed to what? Okay, well, can I just ask for a next slide then? Sorry. Manual input, okay. Fantastic. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, cool. So, why is there so much value now, maybe as opposed to a couple of years ago? Don't actually read this, because I'm gonna. I know I shouldn't do the texty slides, and we discussed this. I know, but I'll distribute those to you. So this is basically your notes, basically, right? So you don't have to take notes. So why is there so much value now locked into an ecosystem? So, as we are in the 21st century, basically running up to planetary boundaries. I'm not going to go through the whole industrialization history, but at least since 1971, when we read well, not me, but our previous generation read the the report by the Club of Rome saying we're running up against certain planetary boundaries. And now we are actually experiencing that in terms of multiple crises, in terms of global climate change, and also in terms of biodiversity loss, etc. So we are in a situation where an intact nature and intact ecosystems have become increasingly valuable as an asset, right? And this has really changed the landscape. Another thing that has changed the landscape is that not only are we intellectually aware of this, we have also started to establish mechanisms, global mechanisms that are attempting to deal with this, right? At least in terms of climate, we have a bunch of international agreements, commitments by nations to go into reducing greenhouse gases, into increasing biodiversity. I'm mentioning this because those mechanisms are going to be really important when we talk about how you can access that value that is stored right now inside of your functioning and well-protected ecosystem. So these are the points essentially I want to bring out before I actually go into the topic, because it's important to frame that properly. And the last point I want to mention is that technology now has reached a point where we actually can unlock these things using technology in a safe and reproducible way. And I'm talking obviously about blockchain technology coupled with IoT, coupled with satellites, etc. So I want to add another concept here that's really, really important, because it drives essentially the whole idea what's behind the valuing ecosystem services such as Palau. So, and most of you will be familiar with this if you have taken any Economics 101 class. You will notice, so any activity, any industrial or any activity, in fact, whatsoever that you undertake has a direct goal and you're working for that. This is going to be on your balance sheet, but it also produces some side effects that you not necessarily have on your balance sheet. Like if, for instance, if you're driving your car, you produce a certain amount of noise and pollution, and you're not necessarily paying for this, what you're doing there. Some of it is taxed, some of it is offset, but not everything. So these will be typically externalities. They don't go on your balance sheet. They kind of are pushed off on the balance sheet of society and of nature. Vice versa, you also have positive externalities. Like if you start planting a lot of trees in your garden, that is a great thing for yourself, but you also have side effects that are positive. And typically those positive externalities aren't valued either, so you're not actually getting money for what you're doing here. And that's this concept of having a price tag on externalities, both negative and positive, is the driver behind how you can value ecosystem services in a coherent manner and in a logical manner. And that's at the heart of this concept here. The tragedy of the commons basically is that what I mentioned before is, as we're running up against the planetary boundaries, essentially we are too many, we are too fast, and we are producing now too much stuff that goes through this cycle of extraction from the ground, turning that into material goods and then turning it into trash essentially. So that's kind of the cycle we're looking at. That worked really well when we were 500 million people and the planet was really big. Now we have an entire, we have the global south coming, fortunately, into a situation where, out of poverty into middle classes, and that just produces an even bigger footprint. We have essentially industrial growth is dependent on actually exploiting those resources. So here's our dilemma, and as these goods, namely clean air, clean water, etc., were free, we had just used them, and now we are in a different situation. But that really drives the value here. So a lot of the attempts to help to sort of get ourselves back into a survival situation where we can actually survive this and prosper as a planet are based on nature-based solutions, on nature capital. So the question here becomes not only how can we stop polluting, but actually how can we align the economic incentives correctly so that we're not just forbidding people from polluting or punishing people from polluting. In fact, how can we create economic incentives that are aligning planetary goals, SDGs, whatever you want to call them, with economics properly. So if we're looking at how do we establish this value now? When we look at the concept of ecosystem services, and I want to just quickly explain what that is, so and how important it is. Ecosystem services are essentially the entirety of the positive outcomes from an ecosystem simply existing and being protected and being in its natural state. That is one thing is obviously carbon sequestration, but of course there is other benefits, such as in the case of trees, filtering the air, retaining water in the soil, improving soil quality. In case of marine ecosystems, it's definitely biodiversity, blue carbon, and also providing fish and food actually for many ecosystem chains, right? Food chains here. So what it means is that functioning ecosystems are fundamental to planetary survival, to our actual existence, and are responsible directly or indirectly for more than 50% of global GDP. So this is absolutely not something we can ignore, even if we were to reduce and extract all the carbon from the air right now. We would still need to work with biodiversity and make sure that this is also protected. So, and Palau here has an incredible role to play and has an exemplary function, obviously. Now, how? I'm not going to go through this. This is just to scare you a little bit. About how to actually value this, right? So I talked about how important it is, but like, how do you actually value this in now concrete terms for an economy like Palau? So there are many models on how to do this. Here's a total economic value model. There's other kind of legacy models that are looking at basically how much can you sell a tree for, how much can you sell something for, plus some perceived value. But we have advanced since then, and here's just a screenshot of an article that one of our advisors, Mr. Ralph Chami, has written, and he became kind of famous because he has established sort of the value of certain species. So if we were, for instance, whales and elephants, so for instance, if we were to pay a whale a salary for the individual's contribution to our planet, that would be around $2 million over the lifetime of the animal, right? So and these are not just figures that are coming from thin air. That's actually scientifically and peer-reviewed literature. So this is establishing the value, the ecosystem value here of individual species, but of course we can do the same thing for entire ecosystems, right? So the many whales, including all their food chains, etc. And now you're starting to understand that the value of a living animal, in this case the whale, is way higher than what you could technically sell that whale for. Or, in other words, if you have a tree that's a living tree, the value of that tree is way higher as a living tree than what you could sell the timber for. So that concept now starts to make sense when I said before, okay, how can we align economic incentives with the goals that we actually have? If we are able to establish the value of those services, then we can start, okay, time's up, I guess. So, can we restart this thing?
You're good. It's still over there.
It's still
over there.
Oh, cool. Okay. So yeah, I've been sort of left-brained a little bit anyway. So I'm going to go on this side here. So then we can establish if we can reliably establish that value, we can start now kind of crowding out extractive, destructive types of economic activity in favor of more profitable economic activity when we are actually creating this economic value. Now I'm going to try and go into two things that we need to do in order to do that. And so we're going to use the blockchain, obviously, to do that, to record that value. But also we have to measure it. So let's say we're happy with the methodology. I mean, that's a seminar in itself. We're not going to go into this. But let's say we have established a consensus on the methodology on how to value this. Like the whale, $2 million, right? Or we say like a coral reef, such and such amount, okay? So we established this. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to measure it, right, physically. Now we're getting into the actual thing. This is not just a vision, it's something that can actually happen today. So we're gonna have to measure this, and this is what's usually called monitoring, reporting, verification, MRV in this space, and many of you guys will be familiar with this. One thing I want to say here is we're all very happy and excited about the blockchain, but the blockchain itself cannot really create trust. It can transport trust really well, but we have to establish it at the beginning. When we bring something on-chain, it has to be trustworthy already, whether it's an identity or, in this case, the value of an ecosystem. Here, what you're seeing here is an infrared satellite that is measuring the addition of biomass in a forest, and trying. Okay, can you advance the slide, please? For me, yeah. Oh, there's another. Yeah, perfect. And so, what we are doing here, and this is concretely what's actually happening. So what we're doing is basically we're taking those measuring points, in this case also satellite, or yeah, great, or sediment measures of sediment profile imagery typically for the Palau application. That would be great, or eDNA, whatever it might be. We're taking those measurements, we're making sure that we cross-reference it, and then we create a secure digital asset based directly on those measurements, right? And that means we have now created an asset that lives on the blockchain, that has a secure origination that is mostly technology-based, but can also be based on traditional, ancient stewardship techniques, right? It doesn't have to be exclusively technology. It can live together with what has been happening specifically in Palau or other island nations already for centuries. So this can be fused together to create those kinds of assets. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Oh, hey, now it works. So I'm not going to go through this. This is something if you have questions. But here's the. Okay, so how much? What's the value? And so I've done a little bit of research, and this is not the first time we're doing this. So there's always a little bit of a survey and a scoping, etc. And what usually comes out are very, very high numbers. And I'm presenting this here not because I want to say this is realistically what you're going to get in cash, but it gives you an idea of, if you're taking this seriously and you're taking a serious scientific methodology, economic methodology, you are getting into very high numbers, and we're talking about this is per year. This is not something that's like an established, it's not a mineral deposit, because these are services. So these are, they're based on a natural capital, but these are services. So I want to caution, of course, against taking this at face value directly in this sense, but it gives you an idea of the order of magnitude that if we're able to bring that into an international context, and if we're able to value this inside of existing frameworks or new frameworks, such as the Paris Agreement, we can actually get to very, very substantial numbers. And this is why we believe that not only can this generate revenue directly, but it can also back, let's say, a stable coin in terms of value. And if we're talking about backing this, and by the way, this is not a new concept, right? So the idea of natural capital accounts is around for more than 10 years. and is well documented as well. This is not new stuff per se, right? So if we're talking about backing a national stablecoin, a national currency with your own national assets, in the same thinking of what you already are doing in terms of protecting your environment, we're getting to a point where we say, here's a nationally centered, sovereign way of backing your national currency or your national assets, however they're configured, in this case with a stablecoin. But we're talking about something quite substantial and could be a real shift in how things are sorted out. So again, here's how this would work. I will share the slides, so this is something just to kind of look into. Just a last point here, this is I'm sort of anticipating a question here. So how could we extract liquidity against that, right? You can say like, yeah, cool. I mean, so you have $50 billion a year like you're sitting on, but how can you make can extract some actual liquidity from that? So in the Paris Article 6.2, and this is why this is kind of like a much talked about piece in the industry, it is possible to trade between countries. So let's say Canada doesn't meet their CO2, their greenhouse gas reduction goals. Well, they can go to Palau and say, hey, could you sell us some of your excess wealth that your blue carbon in this case, and we will pay you with Canadian dollars or US dollars in exchange. So this is how this can potentially work, and this is based on international frameworks and bilateral agreements. This is all agreed on. Tangible benefits of this, and this is my last slide here. We have this, as I mentioned, this obvious connection between your natural treasure and your national capital accounts. You can reduce your cost of capital on the international debt markets, and intact ecosystems become truly more valuable than exploited ecosystems. In fact, protection is now economically viable and profitable beyond just tourism, tourism is just like one piece of an ecosystem service, right? But there is much, much more than that. It can be implemented very fast. The technology is here, the frameworks are here, and the expertise is here. So this is your summary, and we will definitely share the slides so you can read up on this. And I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to some questions.
Thank you, Christoph, for sharing this very exciting talk about putting Palau's natural resources, tokenizing it, and also to trade internationally in Paris Agreement. So now we would like to have 2 questions from the audience. Of course, Christoph will be here for the whole weekend. You can this is him, we can ask him anytime. But anybody has questions with this CBDC initiative, with 2 questions that we are open.
People are hungry. Ask me over lunch or during the breaks, and yeah, let's see how we can implement that for Palau. That'd be amazing. Thanks again.
All right, so now we are coming to the last talk in the morning. And before I introduce the speakers, I would just want to remind everyone that after this, we have a lunch that we got lunch boxes from Tori Tori, and you can pick up the lunch in the restaurant downstairs. Everybody here, you will have a lunch box free of charge, so get it, eat it, and appreciate it, and then stay for the afternoon. Okay, so now allow me to introduce the last speaker of the morning section, and it's Patrick Friedman, and his talk is about competitive governance and seasteading, which is a floating sustainable nation. Patrick Friedman is a legendary figure in the network state movement. He was the one that started the first network state project, seasteading, which inspired Balaji and a lot of people in the space. He focused on new governance or competitive governance in this case. And Patrick is also an investor in this new frontier sector and has advised a lot of countries' governments on digital transformation. So he is not here with us today. He is sitting at his home in Austin, Texas, so he will be giving the lecture online. He really wished he could come, but I think he broke his leg, so that's why. So do we have him on Zoom now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Patrick. This is Elaine. Can we hear you?
Yes.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay.
So I guess it's all me.
All right. So now it's you. Competitive governance and seed setting, the sustainable floating nation. Here you go, Patrick.
Okay. See if this works. Hey, I'm Patrick Friedman, and like Lane said, I've been working a long time, over 20 years, on how to upgrade governments for more innovation and how to improve faster using these tools that Elaine mentioned. And since I've been around for a while, I'm going to use my history in the sector to introduce some of these tools for innovation. So after college, I chose to live in Silicon Valley, and there were great things about it, but I really wasn't happy as a citizen. There were two main issues. First, I'm a libertarian, which means I tend to be progressive on social issues and conservative on economic ones. And in the US and most of the world, these really aren't mainstream beliefs. So there's no mainstream party representing them, and in a democracy, that means there's very little chance that my values will be enacted. And the second issue is just quality of service. Like, I can walk into any store in a mall here in America, and I get way better customer service than if I visit the Department of Motor Vehicles. Way better. But this doesn't have to be. If I visit a place like Estonia, Singapore, or Dubai, it's different. The government actually functions efficiently, as if they care about me as a customer. But, you know, that said, those countries weren't right for me because they didn't match my values. And in fact, I looked around the world, and there were, you know, different packages, good and bad, but I didn't really find anything that really matched my values and was well run. And so that got me started, thinking and researching about why this might be true and how to fix it. You know, originally so that I could live in a country that was right for me, but eventually I realized it was much bigger than that. And if we could enable governments to innovate and upgrade, then lots of different people could live in countries that were right with them. People with totally different beliefs than me could maybe create communities that became countries around their own beliefs. So to understand this, I turned to economics and political theory, and you know, as a tech guy in the Valley, there's definitely some startup concepts there too. And I'd say the brief summary of my theory is that old ways of change that work within the system can only bring small improvements. That's important, but at the same time, we need a way to test ideas for big upgrades. And eventually, we need to be able to start new countries that are intentionally designed from scratch to serve their citizens well, kind of the new technologies, just as representative constitutional democracy, what became the industry standard because it was way better than what came before. I want to find the other forms of government, the new forms of government that weren't even possible 100 years ago, forms that use the internet, for example, that might have changed things just a little bit. And I want to find those. So, this requires experiments, and we have some examples. So today's regulatory sandboxes in the US and Europe are a much weaker version of this idea, where they let select companies test ideas under more flexible regulation for a limited period of time. Dubai pioneered the kind of modern zone approach of changing out part of government, which is actually what I work on now. Back in 2004, they created the Dubai International Financial Center. This was an area that had totally different commercial law than Dubai and the rest of the UAE. And it was even in a different language. It was English. They copied them from London and modified them. And another thing that we based our work on was in 2009, Nobel laureate Paul Romer, he pitched this idea of charter cities and his take on the economic benefits that was partly based on what Dubai had done, but expanding it in new ways. And what we needed was not just one or two examples, right? The need to upgrade government, the need to test new rules and institutions, this is needed all over the world. So what I was thinking is that I had to find some repeatable way to help any country that wanted to do this. And so the first period of my work in the 2000s was focused on building on the ocean. Back in the early 2000s, I was in two small group discussions. One was about starting countries, and the other was about floating cities. This was before Dubai and before Romer. And so these ideas about trying out new systems of regulation, new institutions, they were much too new to bring to nations. I mean, not even close. But given that, I realized that maybe we could create new jurisdictions and maybe even someday startup countries if we lived on the ocean. I mean, after all, a lot of governance innovation has always happened on the frontier. I mean, that's how America started. And maybe if modern engineering could enable ocean life, open up a new frontier, then we could unleash a huge wave of innovation, trying out all kinds of things and finding some that work way better, and bring governments, laws, and institutions into the 21st century. One example of this, I got a little bit of validation, as in 2002, this cruise ship launched, the World. It was the first and probably the still only that was designed for full-time residency traveling around the world. Unfortunately, the unit sold so poorly that the management company actually sold it to the high net worth residents after a year and a half. But they kept it running ever since. So in 2003, I wrote this paper about the theory and economics of the global governance market and why there's so little innovation and how startup cities might change that. I joined Google in 2004, and in my spare time, I read a whole book on this idea of seasteading, started building a little community, and eventually I was funded by Peter Thiel in 2007 to start a nonprofit around this called the Seasteading Institute. It was the first modern nonprofit, as Elaine mentioned, that was talking about these ideas for how to make new institutions. And the funding from Peter Thiel was kind of the beginning of this alliance between tech and new innovative zones. I mean, look, we want to upgrade governance. We want innovation. We want new things that work better and not just in theory but are actually built. And Silicon Valley Tech was the place in the world to do this. The place that picked ideas that seemed crazy, the right ones, and then built world-changing companies around them. This idea was way too big for any one person or nonprofit, so I traveled the world for several years, creating a new movement and community around these ideas. One thing I hadn't expected is that it didn't just attract innovators, but it turned out there was a whole world of people with their ideas about how to build better homes and cities and societies for sustainability and self-sufficiency, and they had their own technologies they wanted to use, their own sustainable energy plans or new home building technology. And they were hungry to test these ideas, and it was really hard to, because what they needed was to build communities from scratch with other like-minded people. And I also spread this crazy idea enough that it was made fun of by The Onion and the Colbert Report. And to me, the combination of support from someone like Peter Thiel and being made fun of by the mainstream told me that I was definitely on the right track. So with this startup mindset, I decided that the next step was leaving the institute, finding someone else to run it, and to start a business which would complement it so we could put these ideas in practice. An early PayPal employee and I started exploring the concept of a cruise ship for medical tourism. And then the Honduras Zeta program was launched. It was just incredibly, incredibly groundbreaking. It was the first program in the world where regulators would select private companies to administer zones like in Dubai that had their own commercial law. Of course, being part of Honduras, these zones were under their constitution, all of their treaties, and used their criminal law. The failure of the world cruise ship as a business shows the downside of the ocean. It's an incredible place, but it's difficult and expensive to build there. Now, we saw that cost constantly falling as technology improved, and we really hoped that we could speed it up and find ways to make it affordable, and the Seasteading Institute is still doing it. But what I saw was an opportunity to create a new jurisdiction on land and work with the host country. So with several co-founders and funding from Peter Thiel and others, I started a charter city company, probably the first, working to build one of these zones in Honduras. But after a year of work, we realized they were too early. Honduras had changed their constitution, but they hadn't allocated any budget yet. And this was a really new program that was going to take quite a bit of work to bring to reality. Years, probably. So we wound up the company, and it wasn't until 2017, actually, that they really got going. And meanwhile, a team from the Seasteading Institute founded Blue Frontiers, which worked with French Polynesia for a seastead near shore with its special economic zone. They were planning to build just off Tahiti, but eventually there were elections, and people said, hey, that might be an eyesore on our beautiful island. So they were given the opportunity to start fresh with a different island if they could get the mayor's agreement, but they just hadn't raised enough money to continue. And by the way, French Polynesia is a great example of delegating regulatory authority for those who are having trouble understanding, right? There's the EU, which has some regulatory authority over France, and then France, which is sovereign, delegates some of its sovereignty to French Polynesia, gets some independent, and then each island within French Polynesia has really significant autonomy that's passed down from the colony. And so there's actually this whole stack of jurisdictions. Another example is countries that delegate a narrow area to a private company. You could say Liberia with its flag registry, and there are many more examples of these public-private partnerships. Anyway, so I went back to work at Google actually while this was happening. The movement kept growing. It had new leaders, and there were a bunch of new nonprofits created. The Free Cities Foundation, the Startup Societies Foundation, and the Charter Cities Institute. And what was strange was that there was an unexpected generational effect happening as the high school and college kids who heard my ideas in 2008 were now in their 20s or early 30s, many of them successful entrepreneurs. And the next milestone was 2017, when the Honduras program was finally operational, and they gave the first preliminary approval to Honduras Prospera. Seeing that this was actually really happening in the physical world led me to start Pronoma's Capital, which is the first investment fund for these innovative zones in charter cities. It's anchored by greats from Silicon Valley like Peter Thiel, first check from Balaji Srinivasan of the Network State. We have incredible investors like Mark Andreessen, Joe Lonsdale, Naval Ravikant. And our first check, actually, before we even formed a legal entity, was to Prospera in 2018. And then our first check after we launched in late 2019 was to Prospera to lead their Series A, because they're really the leader in doing this kind of thing on land. And over the past 4 years, we've invested in and worked with quite a bunch of companies. So besides Honduras Prospera, there's the Praxis Society, which has 15,000 people who want to build a society together, young, ambitious entrepreneurs. And they're actually talking to Italy and Greece right now about locating there. There's Etana in Nigeria, founded by E, who started 2 of Africa's 7 unicorns. Etana is to be a tech hub in Nigeria with better governance and reliable infrastructure. Etana recently got the first digital special economic zone in Africa, which offers incorporation and e-residency. There's Small Farm Cities building in Malawi. They have a full stack solution to turn empty land into profitable farming communities. They're growing like crazy, and they're going to build a network of villages that turn into a network of small cities and begin innovating in governance, building regional hospitals, and continuing to grow. And of course, our most recent investment in Club de Prospera, that's small farm cities, and our most recent investment in Metropolis. I met Martin 5 years ago, and I saw an extremely like-minded visionary with his own really interesting ideas on how to bring this stuff into practice. It's been a real pleasure to be a small part of the Metropolis team and contribute to the innovative programs they're working on here in Palau. For me, having been around so long and starting with so little, it's just amazing. I'm amazed every day to see how this sector of trying to upgrade and innovate in governance has gone from theories to reality. As we say in Silicon Valley, right now, it's time to build. I and my portfolio companies are working with 12 countries around the world who know that in the 21st century, success requires innovation. I think we have every continent except Antarctica. Among these countries, of course, is Palau, where I've had the pleasure of working with President Whips on what the best approach is for this country. I've been very impressed with how open-minded he and the rest of you are to these new ideas. I'm excited to build things together, and I know that some of you are too. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for your thorough history and enlightenment in this frontier sector. One thing I forgot to mention, Patrick comes from a very legendary family. Not only he is the visionary, his grandfather is the Nobel Prize winner in economics, Milton Friedman. And Patrick, of course, himself has created, enabled, empowered a lot of development in this. So now we are approaching lunchtime, but before that, we are taking maybe 2 questions for Patrick. Since he's not here, this is your only chance to ask him questions this weekend. All right, so I guess everyone is hungry. Well, thank you, Patrick, for your time. And if people want to ask more questions, I will have them to message you. And yes, thank you and have a good evening. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so the lunch will be served in the afternoon. We will be back here to start our afternoon session at 1 p.m. 1 p.m., so don't be late and stay tuned.
Yes. Hello. During the lunchtime, please don't forget to sign up for the trip to to see the stone mining quarry, number 1. And then also, please don't forget to visit the booths outside and meet our sponsors and get to know them a little bit better. Thank you, and let's network and have lunch downstairs and come back at 1 o'clock. I think it's been very informative and we're learning so much. And maybe, Mariano, we can do something in Fana. Thank you for coming. Thank you.